with our meeting minutes from August 22nd. I see Commissioner Raymond is not here, may come later. Commissioner Braun is running a little late. So our two alternates here will be up. I'll let Commissioner Kowalski, so I think she is on deck with.
Correct. It would be, well, you're going to need all three to start, but it would be Janine for Lenny or Dan, who are not here, Tom for the other, and then Peter until Kathy is here.
So we're just on meeting minutes.
Okay, wonderful.
All right. You need a second, or can I?
I'm good.
Thank you.
Move to approve.
Commissioner Francis. Second, Commissioner Corsillo. Sorry. Kowski's going to abstain. We'll get to that, but that's fine. Commissioner Francis, any comments?
No, I'm fine.
Commissioner Corsillo? Any other comments on the meeting minutes? All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand. Got 6 hands in favor, 1 abstention. So passes in that way. Before we move on, one thing I'll note, we have one of our line items is the POCD zoning regulations update. In light of, we just have some short old business and public hearing. In case just as an update, I'm going to put that POCD regulation update at the end. It's an internal discussion that the public can be done in public. I think just getting old business and public hearing out of the way makes sense for people who are here for those 2 items only. Next item is 845 Mill Hill Terrace, Hamlet Hill Parcel Review, a preliminary subdivision plan for open space disposition. Mr. Wentz.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, this parcel, this is a preliminary review of the subdivision plan for recommendation for disposition of open space or payment in lieu of providing open space. The narrative submitted describes this proposed subdivision of 3.01 acres in an R3 zone into 5 lots. As you know, and have seen in a couple of recent reviews. You have arrived. Section 2.3, the subdivision regulations requires that for subdivisions equally or exceeding 4 acres or 5 or more lots, that the applicant dedicate 10% of the land as open space or pay a fee in lieu thereof. You will recall that this matter was inconclusively reviewed back in June. At that time, the applicant reported to you that if they were to be held to the open space requirement, that they could only produce 4 lots rather than the 5. And there was a question at that point whether the 4 lots would even trigger the open space or payment in lieu requirement. They have now visited that matter and have presented, now have come to the conclusion they can in fact do a 5-lot subdivision and also provide open space, which they are showing as an approximate 20-foot wide strip of land totaling 13,000 feet or 0.3 acres. That strip, pursuant to their narrative, is proposed to be incorporated into an adjacent parcel that also owned by them, the parent company to the Maplewood Senior Living. That adjacent parcel is currently protected by a conservation and stewardship easement. An alternative could be to establish an association of property owners within the subdivision that would own that strip. Either way, it would be privately owned. There is an alternative, as you know, to consider a fee of 10% of the pre-subdivision value of the land. That would be approximately $91,000. The Conservation Commission looked at this once before and had recommended the payment of a fee rather than the open space. They re-examined the issue again after the map had been revised to show how they could, in fact, provide open space. And they voted on August 16th to maintain their original recommendation of accepting a fee in lieu of open space. So, as you know, this is a non-binding review at this stage to give the applicant some guidance as to how to move forward with their formal application. And I will leave it there, Mr. Chairman, unless there's any questions.
Thank you. So we are familiar with these non-binding reviews. in light of somewhat of a more distinct issue than we've seen, it might be advisable, I think, to get a motion for a recommendation on the table to discuss, either to recommend taking the open space or recommend take the fee in lieu of the open space. I think Commissioner Collins, since Commissioner Braun is here, won't be able to vote at the very least, but certainly partake in the discussions, I believe. That we've always allowed alternates to do in the discussion for this.
Well, for matters that are a vote, it should not, certainly public hearing matter, yes, in the POCD discussion, absolutely, but for matters that where you're taking a vote, no.
Okay, so that leaves Commissioners Corsillo and Gowski. Can I have any motion for discussion? Commissioner Levy?
Motion for sake of discussion to consider a fee in lieu of.
Second, Commissioner Francis. Commissioner Levy, thank you.
Before we go further, question, sort of proposed or possible strip of open space. It's basically on the circumnavigates the parcel. Is it fully adjacent to the Maplewood property or only part of it, if you know?
All of it. I'm sorry, I realized I only have one copy of this, but I will start it down with Kathy. All of the white parcel here is the subject parcel. The Maplewood tracks are adjacent, and the crosshatch piece is the parcel over which there's a conservation stewardship easement. So,
And that's owned by Maple.
it's owned, yes, it's the same company that owns, it's OHI Connecticut something or other LLC, but it's the same agent owners.
So it could go either way in terms of private ownership. If this was open space, it could be the neighborhood organization or it could be the Maple.
Well, they are proposing that if you were to choose open space, that they would just move the property line and this strip to themselves, basically adjust the property line so it would become part of the adjacent parcel that would also be encumbered. This is likely going to need a wetland review ultimately, and it would likely be encumbered by that same kind of conservation stewardship easement. But to answer your question, yes. And there's a map that will get passed out that kind of shows that. I apologize for only having one copy of that.
I want to interrupt.
No.
So we have sort of dual ability or two different types of ability to, if we wanted to keep the land from being developed. Conservation has said they don't necessarily need this to be preserved but LAC said they do. If we chose to preserve the land, that could become part of the conservation easement? Or would it just become part of the land owned by Maplewood, like a stripe of conservation easement, and then this stripe of land that's not a conservation?
That's an interesting question. It remains to be seen. There's likely going to be a wetland review process for this ultimate subdivision. So whether or not it's open space, there's probably going to be some measure of conservation easement potentially involved here. I don't know the answer to that for sure. But their proposal in their narrative would be to, subsequently, the subdivision is located adjacent to private open space that is deed restricted by a conservation easement. The proposed open space set aside will be incorporated into the adjacent parcel and protected by a conservation easement. So they are proposing to encumber it with the same easement that already encumbers the adjacent parcel.
And the value, I'm sorry, I got here late, the value of the open space dedication, and that's again based on town appraised values?
The open space fee would be just shy of $91,000.
Commissioner Levy?
Another question. It's basically what, a 10-foot wide strip?
It's about 20.
That would basically be within the rear setback for each of these lots anyway.
It would, depending on where the property line is, yes, if the property line remains as is, it would be within the rear setbacks of those lots, yes.
They couldn't, so it would likely remain open space regardless because you couldn't build on it.
I think the difference is whether they clear it versus leaving it forested, I guess, for lack of a better term. Commissioner Francis, you seconded. Commissioner Levy, are you done?
I am.
For now, at least, yes. Commissioner Francis?
No further comments.
Okay. Other questions or comments? We should, and we can go down the line if you want, Commissioner Braun.
Sorry, I got here late. At least one or two times ago, we were talking, and maybe you covered it today. The odd issue of if it's.
Yeah, I know where you're going with that. Yeah, I was saying as I came in, the last time you looked at this, the applicant was saying that if we provide open space, we reduce the lot yield to 4, in which case it's questionable whether or not they even have to provide the open space or the fee. They've now relooked at that and have come to the conclusion that we can still do 5 lots and present an open space parcel.
So either way, they would not reduce it to 4 lots.
Correct.
So the only decision really is, do we want open space or do we want money? It has nothing to do with reducing the number of lots.
Correct.
But we're just giving a recommendation today.
Non-binding recommendation,
So my thought is, because this is contiguous to existing open space, regardless of who owns it, and that open space is protected by a conservation easement by, a medical institution, not a homeowner. So chances are that will actually stay and people won't expand into it with their lawns. But I would recommend that it has a great deal of utility because it is next to existing open space. And also I think it would give a bigger buffer to the pond, which is very close by.
Can I go down the line, Commissioner Harrison, or does anybody else have
Any comments?
Okay. Commissioner Levy?
I think I'd be in favor of the fee in lieu of. Basically, the odd shape of this parcel and this piece that they'd, this strip. I think it's likely that it'll be preserved to some degree, particularly where it is, and the funds could well be used for affordable housing or acquisition of additional property.
Those are my feelings, exactly.
I think I concur. I think that's the position I took last time as well. So I don't recall off the top of my head, but I do concur with that.
I'm also in line with taking the fee because of the Conservation Commission's recommendation. That is where I'm going.
Commissioner Crusoe?
Yeah, I agree. I'm inclined to also defer to the judgment of the Conservation Department on this.
We'll put it to a vote quickly, I guess, but I think the positions have been made known, but all those in favor, well, at least let me ask you this. Any other comments? Sorry.
Yeah, I would just say I support what Commissioner Braun is saying. We know that open space is great value and beyond, even if humans can't use it. So I would be in favor of taking the land.
Commissioner Braun?
So when it becomes part of a conservation easement, they have to put monuments up. It's not really just gonna look like someone's lawn. Like if it was not open space, it would be used. It could be used for anything somebody can use that property for. And we have a conflict between two agencies, LAC and Land Acquisition Commission, which thinks we should preserve it, and Conservation, which thinks we could take the money. So I'll go with the preservation.
The recommendation is to, at least from the motion, the recommendation on the table is to take the fee in lieu. All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand. See 5. All those opposed, and your comments have been made, you prefer the land. So that's I guess the opposed position. So I think that's sufficient, right, Mr. Warren?
Yep.
Okay. I will skip over the POCD to the end, as I said, so we can get to old business and then the public hearing. Old business, 855 Stolson Road, request of Eric De Laurentiis for 100% release of a $23,727.50 bond pertaining to subdivision improvements in the A zone. Mr. Wendt?
Yeah, I don't have much here, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, this commission has already approved a 50% release. The remaining 23,000 is the subject of this. We did have the opportunity for folks that if they felt that the work was not done to present at the last meeting was present. You do have a report from the engineering department that they're satisfied the work has been done and recommend 100% release.
I will say, I think I understand too, that Mr. De Laurentiis was available.
Yes, thank you. Yes, there was a miscommunication there. He was in fact present on the phone, but was unable to mute himself. So he was here. So he appreciates your courtesy in moving forward.
No, that's fair. Yeah, but I think that was worth noting that he didn't skip this or just assume we would do something. He was here and just had some issues. So may I have a motion, Commissioner Kapowski?
That's okay. I have a quick question. I actually know Mr. De Laurentiis, so I don't know if for this type of vote, if that would mean that I step out.
Refusal is normally up to your discretion as to whether you feel that your judgment is impaired, if you have a financial interest, or, I mean, this is a town, we all kind of know people in the town, so to speak. So it's up to Mr. Wayne, anything to add, man?
I agree with you, Mr.
So,
Okay. Then no, that's fine.
okay,
Make sure.
no worries. May I have a motion? Move to approve Commissioner Porcillo,
I'll second it.
second Commissioner Pakowski. Porcillo,
Engineering department recommends approval.
Pakowski.
Nothing further to comment.
Any other comments from the commission, questions? Fairly straightforward with the engineering report and no opposition. We put this to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand. See 7 hands, so it passes unanimously. Move to public hearing, 2318 Mill Plain Road, East subdivision application of Sand Dollar Development LLC for 10 lots in a zone. As I said, then we will circle back to item 2 of the fifth day. Frank Fitzpatrick, good evening.
Good evening. Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, for the record, my name is Bill Fitzpatrick. I'm an attorney in Fairfield with the law firm of Russo and Rizzio with offices at 10 Sasco Hill Road. Here tonight representing Sand Dollar Development LLC, the builder, and Sophia Catherine Ross, the owner, relative to the property at 2318 Mill Plain Road. The principal of Sand Dollar Development is Tom Mason, longtime Fairfield resident who is here with me tonight. Has a fine reputation as a premier residential new home builder. The property in question is owned by Sophia Ross, contains 3.7 acres, includes the Ross home at the corner of Mill Plain Road and Stilson, which per the assessor's office was constructed in the year 1900. The property is located in the Residence A zoning district. Requires a minimum lot area of 9,375 square feet. The intent of the applicant is to retain the Ross homestead, subdivide the remainder of the Ross family property into 9 residential building lots. 7 of those lots will be accessed by a proposed cul-de-sac off of Stilson, tentatively named Ross Farm Road. 2 of the proposed lots will be accessed by Mill Plain Road. All of the proposed lots exceed the Residence A minimum lot area of 9,375. By my calculations, the average lot area is 14,415 square feet, or more than 1.5 times the minimum lot area required. In addition, the existing Ross homestead at 2318 Mill Plain and the 9 proposed lots will all comply with the relevant Residence A zoning criteria, including coverage, square, and frontage. There is no inland wetland approval necessary for this application because there are no inland wetlands on site. There's a note in your file to that effect. The presentation to the commission tonight will include testimony from Mr. Mark Ockman, a professional engineer and land surveyor with his own firm known as Ockman Associates. Further testimony will be from Mr. Chris McLean of Langdon, Connecticut, Inc., an international company providing engineering and environmental consulting services with offices, among other places, in New Haven. Mr. McLean is a professional engineer. At this point, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to introduce Mr. Mark Ockman, PE and land surveyor with Ackman Associates of Easton, Connecticut, to outline the re-subdivision proposal.
Good evening, Commission. My name is Mark Ackman from Ackman Associates, Engineers and Land Surveyors. For the record, PELS number 24913. The property at 2318 Mill Plain Road is approximately 3.72 acres in area. Is located on the southeast corner of Mill Plain Road and Stilson Road. The parcel is part of the original 50-acre Ross Farm Estate, which is shown on record map 618 and is on the screen there. And the highlighted area is our parcel within that historic parcel. To show the extent of the original farm, we overlaid the record map onto the current town of Fairfield GIS map. So next slide. As you can see, the farm extended northerly from Ross Hill Road to the Mill River on the easterly side of Mill Plain Road. Throughout the years, the farm has been subdivided several times to include properties located on Emmy Lane, Ferguson Drive, Crystal Lane, Crocus Court, Ross Hill Road, Hirsch Road, as well as Orchard Hill Lane. The property is found in Zone Residence A, which requires a lot to be a minimum of 9,375 square feet in area, have a minimum lot frontage of 75 feet, and a minimum lot square of 75 by 75. The existing property currently has a 2.5-story house, which is the original farmhouse, barn, shed, and gravel driveway on it. All structures are located near the corner of Mill Plain Road and Stilson Road. The main house is served by municipal sewer and public water. The property is located in the Mill River watershed. For the town of Fairfield conservation maps, there are no wetlands on the property or within 100 feet of the property. The property slopes from east to west, with site runoff draining towards Stilson Road and Mill Plain Road and into the town drainage system, which outlets onto the Mill River near the bridge. The applicant is proposing to re-subdivide the parcel into 10 lots, with one of the lots supporting the existing homestead house, gravel driveway, and shed. All 10 lots exceed the minimum 9,375 foot square size and range in area from 11,200 square feet to 18,200 square feet in size. They also adhere to all the required minimum frontage and lot square. 7 of the proposed lots will be accessed via a new road with cul-de-sac off Stilson Road. The new road will be named after the original estate, Ross Farm Road, which will be approximately 290 feet long. The homestead property will be accessed using the existing gravel driveway off Stilson Road, and the remaining 2 lots will be accessed from Mill Plain Road. Those are lots 9 and 10. Tree trees have been proposed on Stilson Road, Mill Plain Road, and along the new road and cul-de-sac, Ross Farm Road, and are in accord with the town of Fairfield subdivision regulations, which say that street trees should be provided for every 50 feet of street line. The proposed site plan has been approved by the tree warden for the location and quantity of trees. At the time of planting, the developer will work with the tree warden for the type of trees to be specified on each of the 3 roads. A non-disturbance area has been proposed to preserve the wooded area along the back of lots 2, 3, 4, and 5, which will provide a visual barrier to the adjacent neighbors. The non-disturbance line is depicted on the site line, or on the site plan. Sidewalks have been proposed along Stilson Road and Mill Plain Road on the side fronting the property, as well as along the new road, Ross Farm Road. Turn to the grading plan now. Residents will be served by municipal sewer, public water, natural gas, and electric. 2 new sewer main extensions are proposed. One will serve the 7 proposed lots along the proposed new road. The other will serve 2 proposed lots adjacent to the Mill Plain Road. Sewer flow monitoring was performed by EST Associates in August on 2 downstream manholes from the subject property. The 2 manholes chosen were selected by the sewer department, and monitoring was done in accordance with the guidelines set by the WPCA. The results substantiated that the existing storm main could more than adequately accommodate the increase in volume required for the proposed 9 new single-family residences. The total post-development flow for the downstream manhole 33 on Alma Drive reached only a 17.1% total calculated capacity and only a 5.9% calculated capacity for the downstream manhole 78 on Millspar Drive. The storm drainage design was reviewed and approved by the Town of Fairfield Engineering Department. The proposed stormwater system for each parcel and the system for the new road have been designed to conform with the Town of Fairfield stormwater management standards. To control peak flows and store the water quality volume to comply with state DEP MS4 requirements, all new parcels and the proposed road will incorporate their own subsurface detention system. This design results in the post-peak runoff rate and volume to be less than the existing conditions for the 2 through 100-year storm events for the site. The development also retains the existing flow pattern for water runoff from the site from east to west. Soils on the property exhibit good infiltration properties, which were determined through these test pits, percolation test, and sieve analysis test results. Runoff from the proposed road and from the proposed parcels up gradient from the road will be collected by 4 catch basins with 3-foot deep sumps in the proposed new road prior to being routed through a hydrodynamic separator and underground detention system. The hydrodynamic separator is designed to remove at least 80% of the total suspended solids load and stormwater runoff as recommended in the 2004 Connecticut Stormwater Quality Manual. The stormwater will then flow into the proposed underground detention system for storage and additional treatment through infiltration and storage of the water quality volume. The water quality volume, as defined in the 2004 Connecticut Stormwater Quality Manual, is the amount of stormwater runoff from any given storm that should be captured and treated in order to remove the majority of stormwater pollutants on an average annual basis. It is equivalent to the runoff associated with the first inch of runoff, which includes around 90% of all annual storms. The detention system for the proposed road will store up to 3.5 inches of 3.5-inch storm event before overflowing into the town drainage system on Stilson Road and Mill Plain Road. The outlet control structure for the detention system will control the rate at which water flows out of the system so that the post-peak runoff rate and volume from the site is less than the current conditions at the site for the 2 through 100-year storm events. On average, there'll be a decrease in runoff from the site for the 2 through 100-year storm event of about 15%. Soil erosion and sediment control measures will be installed in conformance with the 2002 Connecticut Guidelines for Soil Erosion and Sediment Control. Prior to commencement of any construction activities, the limit of disturbance will be marked out. A pre-construction meeting on site will be held with the town to review the sequence of construction. Next, the construction entrance should be installed, properly cleared to the marked out limit lines. A silt fence, reinforced silt fence and sedimentation basin will be constructed as depicted on the SESC plan. In order to divert water from the site during storm events and into the sedimentation basin, a rolling dip and water bar will be constructed along the proposed roadway as depicted on the SESC plan. Stockpiles are also shown on the SESC plan. Erosion control blankets shall be installed in areas noted on the SESC plan on lots 3, 4, 5, once the final grades have been established. All soil erosion control measures shall be looked at once per week and or following any storm event exceeding the half-inch rainfall. Comments have been received from the Fairfield Engineering Department dated September 5th. In regard to the site plan, engineering has requested 3 revisions. The first is moving the stop bar on Ross Farm Road further back from the Stilson Road right-of-way to clear the proposed wall. Second is shifting the proposed sidewalk on Ross Farm Road back to the property line to allow for green space in between the proposed road and sidewalk. And finally, create a clear triangular site distance easement along Stilson Road in order to maintain a clear, unobstructed sight line for Ross Farm Road. We feel the above minor revisions can be achieved without altering the design of the re-subdivision. In conclusion, I feel this application and plan submitted meet the town of Fairfield subdivision and zoning regulations under the residential zone A. There are no variances being requested. The plan is consistent with the development in the surrounding.
Do you expect to have any drilling into ledge?
We did about 16 test holes on site. We encountered ledge on 3 of the test holes. I believe maybe in one area at the end of the cul-de-sac, we will have to chip a little bit into that ledge. Ledge was encountered around a foot below the proposed grade of the road. So I only think that there'll be, chipping of about 1 or 2 feet in that area.
If you have to do any drilling, can that be ascertained and maybe let the neighbors know when that may happen? Just put them on notice of any
Yes.
loud drilling.
Okay. Yes, I'll have the contractor do that.
And Attorney, sorry, we have Commissioner Harrison.
Thank you. How much more impervious pavement will you be adding to this area? How much more surface area will be added? And how much is there now?
Currently right now with the road and gravel driveway, there's approximately 7,000 square feet of impervious area. With the new road, all the proposed houses, which are right now just theoretical, it'll be about 50,000 square feet.
And it seems, there'll be a lot of site work needed here, I imagine. So do you have any cost estimates of how much the site work will be?
No, I do not at this time.
Commissioner Braun.
Oh, I have actually one more question.
Go ahead.
Sorry, from Mr. Wen. And does this meet all of our subdivision regulations?
Well, that is ultimately your judgment, but in my opinion, yes.
Commissioner Braun.
Is it possible to look at the plans to show exactly where the blasting will take place in relation to the development? And I'm thinking of the very steep slope to the east, or it's that angle, so it's what we call it east-west. You said east versus west.
Yeah, your north here up there. East is on the far right, upper right-hand corner.
Can this be blown up bigger?
Thank you, Ms.
I
Harrigan.
guess we can't maybe fill the screen, or?
I think that's about as good as I can get it.
So right at the end of the cul-de-sac, there's a test hole that we dug. And we encountered ledge around.
Where are all the where are all the test holes? Right, those dots, those square dots along cul-de-sac, like 2 at Stilson and 2 halfway up? Are those test holes, or is that something, are those catch basins or something?
No, you'd have to go to sheet 4 of 11.
Is it possible to make this fill the screen?
That's about as big as I can get it, I think.
It's as big as it gets?
Yeah. You want sheet?
Yeah, sheet 4 of 11. That shows the location of the test holes.
And when you say drilling, do you mean blasting?
They'd be hammering.
Like a jackhammer?
Yeah, big jackhammer at the end of an excavator, yes.
It was an underground, like hydrogeology test had done, so you know where the water is below there?
Below rock.
How does it change if
All
you,
we did was we dug test holes with a large machine.
is that to see where the water is, or to see if there's ledge?
both to see if there's ledge or evidence of groundwater, and ledge. There's no restricted layer with respect to groundwater or evidence of groundwater. The soils were a very sandy soil, very conducive for infiltration. But
How deep were the test holes done?
some were dug 13 feet deep.
So that means that there's no groundwater on the site down to 13 feet, at least in the test holes.
At least in the test holes, and we look at also the soil profile to see if we see any evidence of groundwater, because we we dug them in, I believe, in June. So we try to look at if there's any evidence of groundwater. And you can see that through the soil profile, and there wasn't. So that test hole right at the end of the cul-de-sac, we hit ledge around 7 feet. And 7 feet, correct. And we will be cutting a little bit at the end of the cul-de-sac, so that ledge will be about 1 foot below the proposed elevation of the cul-de-sac.
What do you mean? You're not gonna dig down as deep as where the ledge is? Or you,
That's what we have to, in order to put the road process, et cetera, which is another 19 inches below grade, we would have to dig down roughly a foot beyond what the ledge is in order to install that.
and how, the test, where were the other test holes then? Are they where the houses are or just where the road is?
We did several other test holes were through the road profile there, but we did do other test holes where the proposed lots are. So the 3 areas where we hit ledge were at the end of the cul-de-sac, and then in front of lot 5, which is down the page.
Lot 5. Is that the one on Mill Plain Road or?
No, you gotta scroll up, right, lot 5 is that one right there. So that test hole right there, we hit ledge around 6 feet, but we will be filling in that area. So the ledge we won't be affected by the ledge in that area because we will be filling in that area. We hit ledge at around 5 feet. We're not gonna go any deeper than that.
In other words, you're not building anything there that has to go down that deep.
Yeah, exactly, correct.
You say you fill in, what is that?
We're filling in that area from existing grade slightly, so we're gonna be.
You're raising that area.
Exactly, so we'll be above the ledge as we.
I see, on the upper right side, which would be northeast, I guess, those houses built steeply into the hillside.
We have test hole 10, which is in lot number 3,
Which one is that?
the one she's highlighting right there. And we did not,
Oh, lot 3 is that one?
yes,
Are
correct.
these in order, like 1 through 9 or 10?
Yeah, it starts on the front of Stilson Road and actually goes around the cul-de-sac and comes out on the other side of Stilson.
Is the farmhouse known as lot 10 then?
Farmhouse is known as lot 8.
That's confusing. Okay.
So anyways, on lot 3, that test hole, lot 10, we, I think, dug down 132 inches and it kind of no ledge.
So the steep slope, there's no ledge there. That's just a steep slope filled with trees. No. How many?
I do not know. I do know that the lower lying area, which you see from Stilson Road, a lot of those trees, they are invasive trees. They're called Philanthus trees. But as you go further up on the hill, you turn into more hardwoods, maples, etc.
With the hardwood, I'm trying to figure out where the development is. Do those trees have to disappear, all the trees?
No, we are creating a buffer, a 20-foot buffer above lots 3 and 4.
When you say non-disturbance, you mean you don't disturb it, or you're gonna cut trees?
Yeah, we're not going to cut trees above that.
Where's the non-disturbance line on here?
Oh, is that the
That dash, yes.
dash line?
That's the dash line, correct, yes. Dash line.
What's on top of
This one here.
those lines that to me look like elevation lines? Is that the revised elevation or the current elevation?
Those are the dark lines are the proposed elevations, correct, yes.
Being raised or being lowered?
They're being lowered.
So you're cutting into the hillside to flatten out the parcel to build on?
Correct.
Flat yard?
Correct. Well, yeah, we're trying to create a flatter area just around the house, just right in the back of the house, and then the slope will gradually,
Is the slope gonna be steeper or less steep than it is now from where you're flattened? I mean, that still looks pretty steep, kind of, I can't tell. I don't know what the steepness of the slope is.
slope is going to be a 2-to-1 slope beyond the retaining wall there.
What does 2 to 1 mean? Like
That means for every foot, every foot,
45 degrees,
for
30?
every foot, yeah, for every foot up, go 2 feet out.
What degrees is that then? Like 40 degrees or
That's, be a 40, I think 45 degree.
45-degree slope?
Yeah.
So where those heavy lines are, it could be a 45-degree slope.
Mhm.
And then when you go beyond that to where the non-disturbance line is it slope steeper there after that? I'm trying to figure out where the water is going to go once you cut the trees
The
down.
water's gonna go towards our detention system in the road.
And your detention system is where on those two parcels right there?
It's out by the street of
Where does the water go first, though?
goes in. I've got 4 catch basins within the road.
Where does it go from where, at the top of the hill, where's it directed? Are there swales or something that tells it to flow down?
There's swales in between every lot, and they will flow onto the road, and the catch basin, the 4 catch basins on the road will collect the runoff and distribute it to.
No plain road then?
No, the proposed road, we're proposing.
The reason I'm asking is every time we come here, neighbors always say, they promised us there would be no water, and then there's water. And it always satisfies engineering requirements and everything else, but with the, multiplying by, can't do the math, 7,000 to 50,000 square feet of impervious surface and possibly creating like a water, is that going to create a water flow effect for water coming down from up the hill?
No, it will not. We have swales proposed in between the houses, and the swales will then dump the water onto the road, and then the catch basins within the road, pick up the runoff and distribute it or route it through the detention system that you can see next to lot 7.
So which one, so I'm starting at the top. Lot 1 is on the corner, the north corner of Stilson and the new cul-de-sac. 2, 3 is the third one in there.
Correct, yes.
So between 3 and 4, is that where the swale is that directs the water down to another like little decline down to a catch basin right there on the cul-de-sac?
Correct, yes.
Where's that catch basin right there?
Catch basin is right there, yes, correct.
There? So it flows,
This is all overland flow. This is gonna be, obviously there's gonna be grass and lawn. The velocity is not gonna be substantial over there.
it seems like a pretty steep slope when you look at it from the road right now. Like, do you know what the elevation difference is between the road now and the top of that hill?
On the top of the hill, all the way up.
Up to
Some of the,
disturbance places.
yeah, but some of that currently flows off the site and comes back onto the site, along the neighbor to the east there. So a lot of those steep slopes that you see, above the non-disturbance line, that runoff currently flows off the site.
Down to Mill Plain Road or like?
It does flow down to Stilson Road, but it comes in the back of the proposed subdivision of it.
I have another question. We recently approved another house or two really right uphill from there. Like they had to sort of knock down the corner.
Correct, yes.
I don't know if you were involved in that one, but has that been fully built? And is there any issue with water or drainage or anything from that property? Because we changed the topography so much.
That is currently being constructed. Not all the stormwater infrastructure is in currently right now. There's no trench chain to pick up the runoff from the driveway. So there's going to probably be a little bit more right now off the property than when it is fully established.
And do these houses have basements?
These houses will have basements.
How deep does the house get built below whatever the revised grade is?
Below the-
Like 10 feet or?
No, we're gonna be roughly around 7 to 8 feet, low grade.
Okay. And that's a full basement?
Yeah, full basement, depending on what the footing, the foundation walls are.
You said you have detention structures. What are those? Are those detention basins built into the ground?
They're underground detention
Where are
basins.
they located?
They're located right at the corner of Stilson Road and Ross Farm Road on the western side. You see lot 7? You see lot 7 there?
Is that what those check marks are, those boxes are? Is that a detention basin?
Yeah, so there's an underground detention system. So the water will go into the catch basin, then go into a hydrodynamic separator.
It separates solids.
Correct.
How big are the solids? Like The size of a straw?
No, small particles, sand, pollutants, oils. And then it will overflow into the underground detention system.
And from that, so that can hold, you said, X amount, 3 inches of rain over what length of a period of time, like one day or?
That can store up to 3.5 inches of rain before it will start overflowing via an outlet control structure into the town drainage system on Mill Plain Road.
So, and it doesn't matter what length of time the 3.5 inches rains in? Like, is that over a period of time, like 12 hours or?
No, it's just that you got enough storage volume for a 3.5 inch storm event.
Okay.
And that doesn't include infiltration, and the soils there are very sandy, very coarse, so there shall be infiltration also included.
All along the way, you're saying?
Yes, correct.
And when it goes into the town sewer system, where does it go in and how does it enter? Does it go underground? Like, is the town sewer, storm sewer lower than this? Does it get there?
It's gonna go into the catch basin at the corner of Mill Plain and Stilson Road. So we're gonna have an outlet control structure.
With a pipe that runs down there?
Yes, we have an outlet control structure and then run into a storm manhole, and that's gonna run down the median strip into the back of the catch basin.
So I hear that our 100-year storms are happening every 10 years now. What does that tell you from the water control perspective? Like, we could have a lot of storms that are big in a shorter, not every 100 years, but every 10 years or shorter?
Well, they keep on increasing also the amount of rainfall for a standard storm. So now we're using, instead of using the Connecticut Stormwater Quality Manual average rainfall inches, we use now the NOAA Alice 14 precipitation gauges, which now we're up to a 100-year storm is 8.5 inch rainstorm. So I use those values by design.
But this would hold a 3-inch rainstorm.
Three, but then what I am doing is showing that the post-construction runoff will be less than the existing
And
construction.
that's a hard thing to grasp because there's nothing on there now except for a house and maybe a shed. So now you're like, whatever 7,000 into 50,000 square feet is that 6 times?
Correct. So now we got to look at,
50 divided by 7. 7 times. So you're multiplying by 7. So I don't know what percent of impervious surface is there now. Plus, one of it is a gravel drive. Are you going to use pervious pavers for the driveways, or
they're all going to be asphalt.
have you thought about using pervious pavers?
I mean, for each lot, the retention system for each lot that I show, that stores the 5.5 inch storm event. So between that and then the storage of the detention system for the road, and then having an outlet control structure which meters that out at a rate that's less than the existing, that's how we come up with those
If
results.
there was a debacle, like with tons and tons of rain over a lengthy period of time, and then you have a few 100-year storms, would it be helpful to have had pervious pavers would that increase the slower infiltration so you have less problem when something like that happens?
Yeah, but pervious pavers are also there's also maintenance that has to go along with that. They have to be cleaned and swept from debris, they silt up, and therefore you're not getting any infiltration within those pavers.
One last question, and this is not really so much an engineering question, but when you remove a lot of trees, and I don't know how many of the big trees I know there are huge trees in the back. Hopefully those are all behind the non-disturbance line, but they absorb a huge amount of water. Does anyone take that into consideration when they do these studies?
Yeah, when we do these studies, I have to take in consideration the vegetation that is currently there, and that's vegetation.
Your absorption of water capability?
Exactly, and then post-construction, when I look at and model it post-construction, I have to say, okay, we've taken out the woods in this area, the woods in that area, and what vegetation is that gonna be now? Whether it's gonna be lawn, impervious surfaces, so I have to take that into consideration in my design.
That's one last question. In terms of water quality, the first step is it takes some of the solids out, but then you could have dissolved things. You could have road salts, pesticides, herbicides, whatever else ends up there. How does that get cleansed? And does it get 100% cleansed before it could overflow into the storm water system, which then goes into Mill River?
Well, what we do in situations in our design, we basically do, it's called a treatment train. So basically, the first portion of that treatment train is the catch basins with the deep sumps. So that helps with a lot of the pollutants and the sediment, storage of the sediment within the sumps of the catch basins.
Sorry, a sump,
A sump,
just where water goes down into something?
basically a catch basin, your outlet of your
Thank
pipe.
you for explaining all this. I appreciate it.
The outlet of your pipe is at a certain elevation, and below that, that's called your sump.
Just where the water goes down into.
It goes down, and some of that sediment settles within that sump, and then the water comes up and goes out. So that's your first.
It gets cleansed by what in the sump? Something in the bottom of the
It's settling. It's,
the sediments that are in there?
Yeah, sediments.
Through there?
Well, no, the sediments just settle. Some of the sediments just settle.
Sediments, that's what you're calling as the pollutants.
Yeah.
I'm talking about dissolved pollutants,
All pollutants.
not be sediments.
It's within the next portion of the
Okay.
treatment train, which is the hydrodynamic separator.
And where does that get located?
That gets located before it goes into the underground detention system.
So, and the underground detention system is like an underground bathtub, more or less?
More or less, yeah.
Cavern?
It's storage, but that also has the sides and the bottoms, they're porous. And just, like I said, the soils around where we're putting these systems is very sandy. So
So I guess the only issue is if it overflows and has to go into the storm sewer system, then you could have things that didn't get to go through all that cleansing operation, I guess. If it's more than a 3-inch rainstorm in a certain period of time.
everything still will be cleansed because it goes through the hydrodynamic separator, stores that sediment and oils within that separator.
But if it overflows, then does it still go through all that process?
It actually does overflow every time and goes into the underground detention system, but it stores that sediment within that.
I mean, when it overflows into the town, system, the whole system can hold 3 inches of rain, right? 2.5.
Without taking into consideration infiltration.
Okay. If it did overflow, then you would have probably unremediated water that would go into the storm sewer system of the town.
It still gets cleansed to a certain extent, but
Okay. I think that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Commissioner Levy?
Yeah, in terms of the non-disturb area, would that apply not only in terms of the development, but also to the future property owners?
correct. Yes, that's something Bill.
Mr. Levy, my intention is to make that a non-disturbance area, put a note on the subdivision map that calls it a non-disturbance area, requires it to be kept in its natural state, subject to the removal of dead and diseased vegetation, and it would be referenced in every warranty deed out, and it would run with the land and be permanent.
And you referenced some sort of easement or something on Stilson Road, the potential change. Could you describe that a little further?
The engineering department wanted a sightline easement, which will probably affect slivers in lots 1 and 7 and maybe 8, so that no vegetation or anything like that will grow or overgrow within that sightline easement area.
Thank you.
Commissioner Francis?
Let's see, will the sidewalks, are there curbings? Will they be concrete or asphalt?
Concrete.
Are there curbings also?
Yeah, curbing. The curbings on the new road will be concrete as well.
Sorry, I couldn't hear any of that.
The sidewalks and curbs will be concrete.
Okay, thanks.
And then this sump area you were talking about, does that gradually ever fill up with all the pallets?
Yes. With every type of detention system, detention basin, you're supposed to clean it out. You're supposed to have it, a maintenance plan with that. Typically, maintenance for sumps, and cleaning out the hydrodynamic separator, everything should happen yearly, something like that.
Who does that? The town?
Town, yes.
That's what the trucks are going around doing occasionally?
Yeah, the vacuum trucks.
Questions down here? Commissioner Bukowski?
I just have a question around the retaining walls for lots 3 and 4. How tall will they be?
The retaining walls in the rear yard will be 4 feet high.
Okay. So not really question at this time.
We have a sight line needed for Stilson Road.
Yes.
Oh, next one. Sorry, jumped the gun. Other questions for this? I'm sorry, I forget your name.
Mark.
Mark.
What's this large thing here?
But
Driveway to me.
on lot 4,
House 4.
asking,
It's moving.
that looks like a
Looks like a driveway.
driveway, yeah.
Is that what it is, a driveway?
Yes, correct.
Driveway kind of wraps
He's
around.
got a major driveway compared to everyone else.
Yes.
Basketball court. All right, I think we're good now. Any questions? Are there any other questions for this, Mark? Mark, what's your last name again?
Hoffman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Mr. Chairman, at this point, I'd like to introduce Mr. Christopher McLean, professional engineer with Langen, Connecticut Inc., who prepared the sightline assessment submitted to the commission to outline the findings of the report.
Good evening, Commission. My name is Chris McLean. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of Connecticut with Langen Engineering with our office in New Haven. So I'm here, we were tasked with preparing a sightline assessment for the proposed subdivision here. As our attorney has stated, there's going to be 9 additional houses, 7 on a cul-de-sac, 2 with driveways directly on Mill Plain Road. As part of the sightline study, we were tasked with reviewing the subdivision regulations for the town of Fairfield. So in doing so, we wanted to really understand what what the regulations would require and if we would meet them, and then provide some guidance to the design team here to make sure that we were meeting all of the required sightlines. So in doing so, the subdivision regulations state that the town engineer should review and approve all the sightlines. It doesn't necessarily task the town engineer with a specific sightline requirement. So in doing so, we reached out to the town engineer, and he stated that for the cul-de-sac, he would like the cul-de-sac to meet what's called intersection site distance, and then the individual driveways to meet what's called stopping site distance. The difference here is intersection site distance is typically longer, which makes a little bit of sense. For a cul-de-sac. You're going to have more vehicles than just a single family home would have. And for intersection site distance, that's when you're on the side street, the minor road, and you're looking left and looking right, and you can see far enough in each direction so that you can find a gap in the traffic on the road today, and be able to turn left or turn right.
I'm sorry, who designated this?
The town engineer.
Thank you.
Yes. For the single family home, for the driveways, that's what stopping site distance. And so what stopping site distance is if you're a vehicle on the road today on Mill Plain, you can see far enough to the driveways and if, heaven forbid, a vehicle was pulling out and didn't see you, you have sufficient distance to come to a stop if needed. So there's 2 different standards here, and we looked at the cul-de-sac and the 2 residential driveways, actually with all of these in mind, just to have an entirely holistic report. And the other aspect of sightline distance that's being required is based on speed. So speed, if you're going faster, you need longer distance to stop. You need to be able to see further in each direction to make sure that the cars on the road can either see you or you can see them, and you can come to a stop if you need to. So in doing so, there's typically 2 schools of thought. You can use the speed limit that's out there today. Many people don't necessarily think that people drive the speed limit. So then the Connecticut DOT uses what's called an 85th percentile speed. And what that means is 85% vehicles on the road today drive at that speed or lower. So only 15% more drive faster, and that's kind of the extreme case. So when you have your 85th percentile speed, you're really looking at the majority of vehicles on the road today. So in doing so, we went out and we took 2 days worth of counts at 4 different locations in the vicinity of the site to really get a good idea of what speeds people are driving at on the road today on Stilson and on Mill Plain Road. So we looked at 3 different locations on Stilson, one directly at the site driveway, and then one near the intersection with Mill Plain Road, and then one on that horizontal curve to the east of the driveway, because the proposed cul-de-sac is actually it's directly in the middle of 2, geometric horizontal geometry things here, where we're looking at like an intersection where it's difficult to see around the intersection, and then there's a horizontal curve where that could be potentially difficult to see around. So in doing so, we wanted to see what vehicles were doing on the road at the slower speed near the intersection, and then at the slower speed along the horizontal curve on Stilson, and then directly at the main driveway. And then in order to look at the existing driveways, or the proposed driveways on Mill Plain, we also took speeds there. But Stilson was, we really looked in detail at this area because of, there's as people are driving on Stilson Road today, they accelerate and then they decelerate. And how that all factors into how far people need to be able to see for this proposed subdivision, it really matters. So we really wanted to take a holistic look, a detailed look at what speeds are on the road today, and be able to make sure that we can meet the required intersection site distance for that cul-de-sac. So in doing so, we looked at the posted speed limit and then the 85th percentile speed. Posted speed limit on Stilson Road is 25 miles an hour. Vehicles traveling eastbound, so from Mill Plain heading up the road towards the curve, they're driving 28 miles an hour. And then vehicles on Stilson coming around the curve as they kind of hit the straightaway heading towards Mill Plain Road, they're traveling 33 miles an hour. So a little faster than the speed limit in both cases. On Mill Plain Road, they're driving 37 miles an hour. Posted speed limit is 30 miles an hour. So everybody's kind of driving a little bit faster than the posted speed limit, which kind of made us feel good that we went out and we took the speed data. We know for a fact of what the speed is out there today, and we could design appropriately. So for intersection site distance, like I said, it's a little longer. So we looked at 28 miles an hour looking left and 33 miles an hour looking right, and we meet those. You need looking left towards on the cul-de-sac, looking left towards Mill Plain, you need 309 feet. We actually meet 310, so we meet that. And then looking right, we need 365 feet, have about 390, so we could see acceptably to the right as well. So, and then Mill Plain Road, in that case, we looked at stopping site distance because that is what the town engineer requested we meet. So in that case, for 37 miles an hour, we're required to hit 275 feet, and we have over 400 feet in either direction. So a lot of numbers. Just to recap, but we meet the required site distances as required by the town engineer and required by the Connecticut Highway Design Manual. We exceed those in all cases.
So just for Stilson, I'm looking at this that's up on the screen. The top blue one, location, speed data collection. First you have 85 percentile westbound, 33 miles an hour, 85 percentile eastbound is 35 miles an hour.
Correct.
That's 85th percentile of the data that you collected,
Correct.
not of the posted speed limit.
That is correct. In blue is the data we collected.
Okay. The pink is what is the requirement.
Is the actual site distance we.
Okay, thank you. All right, but it's not based on 85 of the posted speed limit. That's based on your own data of
Right. So
separate days. Do you have the dates offhand?
it was early June when school was still in session.
Yeah, when school was still in session. Okay.
June, I think 6, 7, 8, somewhere around then.
Okay, but that's more like where I was directing or where I was heading. Commissioner Bukowski.
I just have a question. The stopping sightline distance on Mill Plain. Can you go over that one more time? So is that to the actual driveways that will come out to Mill Plain, or is that to like?
Yeah, so since it's a subdivision, we're not really sure exactly where the driveways are. So what we did was we measured the stopping site distance to those outermost property corners, just as a maximum of where it could possibly be. And we have over 400 feet in either direction, being able to see on Mill Plain in either direction.
On Mill Plain, okay.
Yep.
And that's the more, okay. Thank you.
Go ahead, continue, please.
Oh, okay.
Add anything else?
I just want to review our recommendations real quick. So number one was just to, that there's an evergreen tree on the corner of Stilson Road and Mill Plain Road. I think in its existing case, it's kind of overgrowing the wall. We're recommending that one be taken out. It's going to help people that are driving on that intersection today be able to see around it a little bit easier. It's also going to allow drivers that are in the cul-de-sac to be able to see towards Mill Plain and actually see a lot of the traffic on Mill Plain Road.
Say where it is again?
On the corner of Stilson Road and Mill Plain Road. It's on the
Okay.
it's on the bottom left corner of the screen here.
Did I get it?
Yep, you got it.
Thank you.
Is that within the town right of way, or is that?
So the tree is actually growing inside the wall, but the limbs are overgrowing the wall. So it's on private property, but it's difficult to see around for everybody that's driving on the road today. So we're recommending that one be removed entirely.
Is that subject property?
That is on the
On the homestead.
the homestead property. And then there's some trees, growing through the fence line of lots, I believe it's 1 and 7, that need to be removed to install the detention system and all that. But if you're driving on Stilson, they're pretty much overgrowing the road. Those are gonna have to be removed to build the subject development. But cutting those back is gonna improve, that are going to allow for this required site distance anyway.
So that's a condition of approval. That's gonna be needed to be done to get the sight lines. I see it, yes, from behind you, but.
Yeah, and that's in that sightline easement that the town engineer, that was a comment from the town as well.
Okay, that's fine.
Yep.
The third, I think you said, right? I only got 2. Was there a third?
The other recommendation I had was just some additional signage on the curve all the way on the right side of the page. We did look at accent data, part of our just general safety review, and at that horizontal curve, people generally drive too fast, and there was some tree trimming, some clearing on the right side of the road as you're coming down the hill, turning left along the curve. Some shrubs were trimmed down there, I think back in November of 2022. But still, some of the signs aren't reflective. And so we're recommending some chevrons, which are some arrows kind of pointing to the right. So at night, when it's not well lit, people know, especially if they're not familiar with the area, that they should be turning to the left, so they don't end up in somebody's property, which they have in the past, or hit the utility pole. So those are the recommendations I had.
Commissioner Harrison?
Yeah, just going back to that point, how many accidents have been reported there?
Let me just look at it. Let me just confirm. So at that,
That's the corner of Stilson, right?
no, so that's the curve.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, so at the curve, there were 7 in the past 5 years. And there was also.
Those were ones that reported to police.
Correct. Yeah. And there were 7 at Mill Plain and Stilson.
14 or 7 altogether?
7 and 7. So 7 at the, yeah,
Where were those again? I'm sorry, I interrupted.
7 were at the curve.
Which curve?
So if you're looking at the map, can we go back to the first sheet, please?
Curve on Stilson.
Yeah, so on the right side, see how.
The woods are, were they?
Yes.
Yep.
Stilson curves to the left as you're coming down the hill. There were 7 there. Somebody hit a utility pole, somebody went into the woods, and then some people were driving on the wrong side of the road, or just kind of clipped each other. But just the existing horizontal geometry is tough there especially because it's not well lit. So adding reflective signage there, letting people know that there's a curve ahead, especially coming down the hill. People generally drive too fast anyway. But so we're just recommending some additional signage there, and some some shrub trimming. And then there was another 7 at the main, or at the stop sign.
We did tree trimming there for the other project, right? Didn't we require that?
Yes.
Done, Commissioner Harrison?
Yes, thank you.
Commissioner Braun?
Could you just explain again to me the location of where you did the speed testing
Sure.
and what time of day you did it and I know you did it 3 days in June, the 6th, 7th, and 8th. What days of the week? Were those during work days or?
Yeah, so to answer your first question, so you see the thick blue lines that kind of go across the road. Those were the 3 locations we actually collected speed.
See thick blue lines. Oh, I see now. So one is up on the curve. And when you said horizontal curve, what are you talking about there?
So I'm talking about, Stilson Road curves to the left here.
Yeah.
So we collected speed data along the curve.
Is that what you're calling the horizontal curve?
Yeah, because you have traffic engineering, there's 2 types of curves. When you're going over a hill, that's a curve. And when you're turning left or right, that's also a curve.
Thank you.
So we collected one along the curve here. We collected one at the near the site driveway, and then on the other side of this, or on the other side of the cul-de-sac, near the intersection there. So 3 locations here, and then there's another one on Mill Plain Road, which is on this other sheet.
The site driveway looks like it's farther down from where you collect.
Right. So we wanted to make sure we understood what was happening along the straightaway, either side of the driveway.
Can you tell us again the accident history? Where were the accidents in general, the 7 and then the other 7?
So there were seven within about a 200-foot radius of the curve here. 7, another 7.
Were those rear enders, like at the stop sign, or what kind of accidents were those at the bottom of the hill there?
They're generally low speed. They're just because people along the curve, they are only, there was 6 that had property damage and 1 involved a minor injury. Those were just people that either took the curve too quickly, or hit a sign or hit something and reported it to police.
And so the speeds, and just because this is the only thing we have to look at. The speeds you noted, the actual speed, the 85% of the actual speed was 37 on the way right or somewhere else?
So we took the speed data and they looked at the whole pool of data, or the whole pool of speeds. Every car had a speed assigned to it, and it was assigned to a bell curve. And we took the 85% of the top speeds, and that is called the 85th percentile speed, and that is what we used as our design speed.
So this is over a 3-day period?
It's over a 2-day period. It varied because our counters went out and.
So one set of speeds was anywhere on Stilson and the other set of speeds was anywhere on Mill Plain Road?
They're at specific locations as noted here.
We have different speed averages from each of the 3 locations on Stilson.
Right, so we have a really good idea of how fast people are going.
And what time of day and day of the week were those?
So these were all weekday, and we looked, and it was continuous over a 48-hour period, 2 days.
And the 37 miles an hour was where then?
It was on Mill Plain, actually, which is, if you can go to the next page, please.
So people approaching Stilson Road that obviously are not turning are going 37 miles an hour?
Yes. But at a maximum, we'll call it, the design speed is 37 miles an hour. Some people are driving slower. Some people are driving a little faster, but.
37 the 85th percentile number?
Yes.
So they're actually going faster than that. That's.
The majority of people, the vast majority of people are driving 37 or less.
And that requires what sight line again?
200 for stopping sight distance. It requires 200 feet. 75 feet,
And you had
over
for
400
which, left or right, or both?
in either direction.
So if somebody is coming out, they have to be able to see 275 feet both ways.
So a car
On Mill Plain Road, the two driveways you're talking about.
Yeah, yep, so on Mill Plain Road, I'll point to them here. So on Mill Plain Road, the proposed driveways are gonna be on the outside of curves, so you can look you could look in either direction pretty far off. So we measured from the property corners because we weren't sure exactly where the driveways would be, and you're required to be able to see 275 feet from this one to that one, and 275 from there to there. And we could see over 400. It's like 435 or so.
And then the ones on Stilson Road where, one was pretty close, there were several, explain what the Stilson, were there two different measurements or two different sight lines?
Correct, because there's two different, looking, one traffic coming from one,
For taking a right?
right, so traffic coming from Mill Plain.
Okay.
If you're on Stilson, you're coming from Mill Plain, heading east. You're gonna be driving a little bit slower because you've just come from the intersection.
Heading up the hill.
Heading up the hill, right. If you're coming around the curve and heading towards Mill Plain, if you're on Stilson, you're gonna be going a little faster because you've been driving.
And that's the one that was 28 miles an hour or 33 miles an hour?
So coming from Mill Plain is 28, which is less, the lower one,
Coming down towards Mill Plain would be 33.
33.
And that required two different sight lines for someone exiting
For someone exiting,
or left
right? So if you're looking left, you're gonna be looking
towards Mill Plain.
towards Mill Plain, you're gonna be looking at slower vehicles, so you don't need to see as far. And if you're on the cul-de-sac and you're looking right,
So you, okay,
you need to see further because they're driving.
so looking left, you needed 309 and you had 310. That's pretty close. And looking right, you needed 390, but had 365, but had 390.
Correct.
And that's if you cut trees down?
Yeah, that's with all the required work that I've spoken about.
And where were you gonna put those chevrons and those signs? Is it on the other side of Stilson or on this side of Stilson?
So it's on the top of on the top,
Other people's property though, isn't it? Or is that on
within
the
the right of way.
right of way?
Yeah.
And what do those, what kind of signs are those? What do they look like?
So they're a yellow square sign with a black arrow on it pointing to the left.
Okay.
Just have a quick question around, so, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the points that you took for on Stilson for the 85th percentile data collection.
Yep.
Why is it that we didn't take it where the cul-de-sac? What was your thinking there?
So when we went out and took data, we wanted to know what was happening on either side. So when you're sitting at the cul-de-sac, looking left and right,
Right.
vehicles that are passing by you, you've already seen them.
Okay.
I'm not saying it doesn't matter how fast you're going, but when you're looking further away, that's when you need to know, your judgment understands how fast vehicles are going.
Yeah.
When they're further away, you've gotten used to it as you drive, but you get a good sense of how fast cars are going. Further away, when they're in front of you, it's not as important. Because they're already within your vision, you're not gonna be turning left or right when you can already see them.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome.
For recommendations, I just want the trees on lot 1 and 7 need to be removed from the sight line. That's within, the ownership, that can be done, but it's needed.
It's needed, yes.
Evergreen on the corner, is it needed? I know it's within the owner's control again, but is it needed, for the sightline calculations?
It is needed and I wouldn't say it's just a problem for this development. Vehicles already on the road today, when they're looking left,
Yeah.
it's tough to see around.
The additional signage is not, are those signs that are gonna be put on this property?
It would be on it's on the other side.
That's what I think. On the other, is it on the other side of the street or around the corner of the curve? So when someone's going downhill, they see the sign to the left.
It's going downhill and if you're looking at the page,
Right.
it's on the bottom right, but it's on the far side of the road than the subdivision.
That's on land that this applicant doesn't own,
It's within the right.
Right away.
town right away, but that's gonna be dependent upon police, I assume.
Okay, correct.
But that doesn't need to be a condition of approval. Or you don't want that as a condition of approval.
That's correct.
Want a recommendation
We
from
can
us,
certainly make it a condition of approval that we apply to the police commission for approval. And we will.
not, recommendation, but not a condition. Got it. Okay, but the first two, the trees, within your control, will be done, but should be a condition of approval.
I agree.
Okay, got it. Any other questions for Mr. McLean? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Chris. Mr. Chairman, I'd now like to conclude.
Before you conclude, because there's one topic that we somewhat touched on last time that I want your opinion on. This being a 9-unit subdivision as opposed
It's in here.
It's in there, go ahead.
First, to reiterate what I stated earlier, there's no wetland approval required for this proposal. Because there are no wetlands on site. The issue of the possible open space submittal was raised at the P&Z meeting on August 22nd. Commission voted to recommend the acceptance of a payment in lieu of the proposed open space. Our request is that that recommendation be adopted by the commission as part of the approval of this process. The preliminary re-subdivision plan accompanying this submission showed the creation of an open space parcel to be located at the terminus of the proposed new road. It consists of a little bit over 28,000 square feet. After review and consideration of that proposed open space, the applicant believed that that proposed open space would not adequately address the open space objectives set forth in section 2.3.1 of the Town of Fairfield subdivision regulations. That land is relatively steep and most critically does not provide a connection to any existing open space. In addition, the land contains no wetlands or areas of particular natural beauty or historical interest. Both the Conservation Commission and the Land Acquisition Committee recommended the town accept the fee in lieu. Standalone parcels such as this are not attractive to the land preservation outfits, Audubon, Aspetuck, because they're too small. There's maintenance issues, there's liability issues. As a result, the applicant is proposing to provide a fee in lieu payment, 10% of the value of the property to be subdivided prior to the approval of the subdivision. Town of Fairfield's assessor's office values the property at $925,900, producing a 10% fee in lieu of $92,590. This is the formula that the P&Z has utilized in the past, reflects the language in the subdivision regulations. It should be noted, proposed payment of the 10% fee in lieu does not change the number of lots in the proposed subdivision. Proposed subdivision will still consist of the existing home and 9 new lots. The elimination of the open space area will simply permit the expansion of the size of several lots, not any expansion of the number of lots. To reiterate, we're requesting approval, a fee in lieu payment of $92,590. It should be noted that the limit of disturbance line proposed by the applicant will preserve part of that hillside to the north as a non-disturbance area, achieving in a certain degree the same goal as an open space dedication. The commission has heard the sightline assessment prepared by Chris McLean of Langen, heard his testimony. Work concludes with the recommended improvements implemented. The conclusion is that the existing roadway infrastructure and geometry meets the Fairfield subdivision regulations for site distance and safety. The applicant will certainly accept the implementation of the minor improvements as outlined by Mr. McLean and referenced in page 8 of the report as a recommendation so that we can apply to the traffic authority, in this case, the police commission. More importantly, the town engineer by email dated September 5 confirmed that the sight line provided is acceptable thereby satisfying the specific standards set forth in the subdivision regulations. At the P and Z meeting of August 2nd, 2023, the issue of the applicability of the affordability requirements set forth in 2.7 of the subdivision regulations was raised. The applicant, in response, submitted a letter dated September 5th, 2023, addressing in part that issue. The letter included the relevant subdivision regulation, as well as section 25.7.9 of the zoning regulations. Application filed, I believe, in 2015 with the P&Z, creating those two regulations simultaneously, and the memorandum prepared by the applicant, which accompanied that application to the commission. The relevant language in section 2.7 of the subdivision regulations relative to the imposition of an affordable housing component required a subdivision plan, quote, that involves the development of 10 or more dwelling units, end quote. In the re-subdivision application at hand, 9 dwelling units are proposed, together with the preservation of the existing Ross home at 2318 Mill Plain Road. Plain language of the development of 10 dwelling units is not satisfied. There are 9 dwelling units proposed. Section 25.7.9 of your zoning regulations was proposed by the same applicant, adopted by your commission, same night. Section 25.7.9 states and it requires an affordability component for, quote, any project that results in a net increase of 10 or more dwelling units. Rest intent is to require an affordability component if there is a net increase of 10 or more dwelling units. In this matter, there is a net increase of 9 dwelling units proposed. 10 lot subdivision, 1 is an existing house, 9 dwelling units, 9 new houses. Lastly, memorandum submitted by the 2015 applicant provides further confirmation. The memorandum states that the affordability requirement applies to, quote, any residential development that will result in a net increase of 10 or more residential units, end quote. Again, we're proposing a net increase of 9 units. The language of the relevant regulations and the memorandum accompanying the original regulatory amendment application confirm that the provisions of 2.7, in my opinion, are clearly inapplicable to this application before you. An additional issue raised at the August 22nd meeting was the possible removal of vegetation from the hillside to the rear of lots 2, 3, and 4 to ensure the future preservation of significant portion of this area. The applicant has submitted a revised subdivision plan, which includes a limit of disturbance line on lots 3, 4, and 5, thus preserving these areas. The limit of disturbance line will be included on the re-subdivision map filed in the land records if you approve it. The re-subdivision map will include language confirming the land beyond that line is to be preserved in its natural state, permitting only the removal of dead or diseased vegetation. Limit of disturbance line will also be specifically referenced the warranty deeds conveying lots 2, 3, 4, and 5 to the new home purchasers. And will include language confirming it runs with the land. The site is served by public water, and the flow test results submitted by the applicant to the Water Pollution Control Authority confirm the approval of connection to the system by the WPCA can be anticipated. The subdivision has taken into account the likelihood of solar panels. Houses are laid out in a fashion to have large areas of roof facing predominantly sunlit directions. The legal standard for the approval or the review of a subdivision application is different from the standard of review applicable to the special exception and special permit applications that your commission often sees. Connecticut case law, specifically the Reed case, Reed v. Plan and Zoning Commission of the Town of Chester, 208 Connecticut 431, a 1988 case states, Planning Commission acting in its administrative capacity has no choice but to approve a subdivision if it conforms to the regulations adopted for its guidance. I believe the detailed record before the commission confirms this application conforms to the relevant regulations. The applicants are proposing a residential subdivision that conforms to the prior approvals by the P and Z for the development over the past years of the Ross family property. The applicants believe single-family development of this property is preferable and appropriate and in conformance with the existing neighborhood. The town plan of conservation and development references in part the mill plain consists primarily of single-family residential development on 1/4 to 1 acre lots. This plan is consistent with that single-family residential development. The reasons I've outlined, I'd request this application be approved. Mark Ockman, Chris McLean, Tom Mason, my client, and I will be happy to answer any questions the commission may have.
You mentioned for your third, when you're going through the lots, 10 lots versus 9 dwelling units. Did I hear you say use a memorandum?
There was a memorandum submitted by Steve Grockwell on behalf of the, I think it was the Affordable Housing Committee. He was the applicant of those two.
Oh, okay. So it's, okay, like the legislative history, I guess.
Yes.
Okay. For the analogy. Commissioner Braun.
2 questions about the open space. Can you tell me again, where was the open space going to be located if there was going to be 10% open space? And also, that would be 0.372 acres, 10% of the total acreage. What's the acreage that would be subject to the easement or the non-disturbance line? How does that compare?
It's roughly like 19,000 square feet.
19,000 square feet.
It's from Mr. Hockman, correct?
That's Mr. Ockman.
So the non-disturbance line would permanently prevent 19,000 square feet from being used by the property owners for any.
Correct.
Is there a marking, would there be a marking there, like a monument or something?
You know, we haven't crossed that bridge, Commissioner Braun. I would think that marking with monuments would make good sense.
Mm-hmm. Is that more or less than the 10%? I can't do math. I think 19,000 square feet. How many acres is that? I can't.
Commissioner
Figure it out
Corstello.
later.
I heard some math from Commissioner Corstello.
Math, what's up?
What
It's
is it?
I figure if it's better or worse than we did the open. Than the open.
0.43 acres,
So the 19, the,
0.436.
that's what
One
the,
acre's 43,560, so it's,
Well, 0.37 would be what's
well,
reserved.
that times 43,560.
oh,
How many acres, 19,000?
giving us a little bit more than,
I know, but
is that what I'm at?
You're only giving it a.
It's not a number, the applicant.
We can consider the number of the applicant.
we were proposing to give you 28,000
28,000, okay.
That the non,
originally. The plan that I showed you as part of the open space submission.
the open space submission was 28,000.
Correct.
And this one is 19,000.
Correct.
So why did that change? Or how did that?
Because we're building houses to a certain extent there, and we stretched it out, made it go behind lot 5. It was a matter of better making those lots work and still preserving the hillside. Keep in mind, if you take the fee in lieu, the applicant is under no obligation to do any limit of disturbance. This was a bona fide effort on my client's part to address your concern. It's a giveaway.
You heard,
I hear you.
you heard our comments at the pre-planning.
We did.
And
Right to
I
react.
think there were recommendations to take the fee in lieu from conservation, maybe land acquisition at the time. Is that true?
Land acquisition and conservation both wanted the fee in lieu. And in the discussion with you, the discussion came up of, well, I want to preserve that hillside. Okay, let's see what we can do to accommodate your desires and still let us build our 9 houses.
Okay,
Okay, appreciate it.
And as far, one other question about the open space. So I got a different number when I looked at the Fairfield, I don't know, I looked in vision appraisal. It seemed like to me that the town appraised value from like a couple of years ago was 1.2 million for the 3.7 parcel, which would be 120,000.
You didn't take out the house. It's the value of the land. That
Does that include
figure
the house?
includes the house.
Oh, so you have, but the house is staying.
Right. But the way you determine the 10% is on land value.
Well, pre-development value, whatever that is, right?
Pre-subdivision,
And also, one other point, when you look on Zillow, it's like 4.2 million. So I don't know how we determine we're only using the town, I don't know why the town appraised value is so different than Zillow.
Range.
This has not been sold yet, obviously.
Zillow is a major range, and I think the regulations go for what the town appraisal is.
I mean, is there a rule that requires that we go by the town appraised value, which is probably outdated by now?
Yes. No, there's a
That's like when was the town appraisal? It's like 2 or 3 years ago, or
2020, I think,
2020.
2020?
October 2020.
Well, that can't possibly still be valid.
Goes for 5 years. Evaluations, 5 years.
Would it have gone up from 1.2 million to 4.2 million in 2 years? That's a pretty big growth, and yeah. I just looked at Vision Appraisal, and it said what the appraised value was based on the last town appraisal. And how and when do we ascertain the value if we take the fee in lieu? That's a question for Jim.
in the event that such fee is required by the commission, such payment shall be equal to not more than 10% of the fair market value of the land to be subdivided prior to the approval of the subdivision.
I guess that presumes there isn't an existing house that's staying.
Land.
Yeah, just
There's-
the being,
Those appraisals, they separate it out with land and building. So you get, on town appraisals, on vision appraisals, so
Correct.
the land says. And what's the statute again, or the regulations?
This is section 2.3.8 of the subdivision regulations, payment of fee in lieu of open space.
I have a question for Jim then. How and when do we determine what the value is? Is that an agreement, or is that just something we impose? How does that get done if we're doing a fee in lieu?
Well, this came up and I provided you via, attached to the email with the spreadsheet of the history of payment and, since 1997, payment versus open space. And practice has been to take the current, assessment of the land value as was just described and apply that to the payment. So if you look at that list, that roster of payments, I have it, there's been a mix of over the years. There have been 27 subdivisions in which a fee was required. And again, that average fee for each of those over the course of those 27, methodology has been the same. Land value was determined by tax assessor. That average has been over those, it's $54,000, a little over $54,000 per subdivision. This is greater than that, with a average per lot fee of just shy of $18,000. Is the way the math works, but in practice, the way this commission has determined that open space fee has been just as described. The 10% of the value of the land, as appraised value of the land, is determined by the most recent assessment.
So we've had other subdivisions where there was a house that was staying, and so we cut that off.
Yes, because whether the house stays or not, the assessment that we're looking at is going to include that house, whether it stays or goes. It's just a snapshot view of the value of the property as determined by the tax assessor.
Seems like you're carving out part of the property. Like if you're doing 10% of the land, it would be 10% of the whole 3.72 acres.
Correct.
But if we're doing 10% of the value, we're doing 10% of the value minus whatever acres are in that lot that's not.
No, the acreage of the existing house is included in the land value. What's netted out is the value of the structure itself, the replacement value.
Okay, now I understand that. So that takes care of part of my question then. And then is it a rule or just a course of practice that we rely on the most recent town appraised value? It seems awfully low to me.
You just cited the regulation, which
No, he didn't cite a regulation saying what, wait, our regulation says we have to use the town appraised value?
No,
I didn't hear you say that.
Mark, I'm sorry.
it goes on to say, the fair market value shall be determined by an appraiser jointly selected by the commission and the subdivider. And what, in my history, I have probably done a half dozen of these. Whether it be Tom Brown or Don Ross, whoever the tax assessor was, come up with a number, and I discuss it with my client, and we agreed in every case to what the assessor determined the value of the land to be.
Appraiser, right? Right. Because assessor is
The town assessor.
the town. Okay. There's a difference between assessment and appraisal, right? But I'm.
Yeah, correct.
Okay. So we're talking about the appraised value, not the assessed value, which is 70%. Okay. So it seems to me like our own regulation allows us to pick an appraiser. It seems to me like we're not chiseled in stone, that we have to, land values have gone up a lot in the last 3 years. And it just seems like we're supporting ourselves if we take 10% of something that might be 1/3 of what the value is. That's just my 2 cents.
Just know what the practice of the commission has been in the past. My client is agreeable to following that practice has been employed repeatedly. Now, granted, I think the last big subdivision in town I did bulkily up on Mill Hill Terrace, that's a long time ago. So there may not have been much recent, but it has been routinely using the town's assessor's figure.
Okay.
My client's willing to do that.
And what's the mechanism for doing this, Jim? Is there ever a dispute or something that has to be worked out, or we would just follow the regulation if we
Well,
tell?
that's ultimately the commission's call as to what that is. I can certainly check in with the tax assessor, who is an appraiser, to see whether he has an opinion as to whether the value of the land should be different today than it was at the time of that assessment.
That would be great.
Any other questions? Commissioner Francis?
For Mark Document. Lot 9 here, is there some reason, I see it's the same size as lot 1, that he doesn't have a driveway with, where he can do a K-turn to get out onto Milton Road? Lot 10 does, lot 1 does, and
Do you want me to bring that up?
I can put something in front of the house so that he can have a turnaround so that he doesn't have to worry about backing up.
FFP and FFG mean,
First floor, first basement, and then garage elevations.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Patrick? Anything further?
Nothing further.
That concludes the applicant's presentation. I'll open it up to public comments. Is there any member of the public? Certainly everybody, but we'll start with in-person, people who are attending in person. Is there any member of the public that wishes to speak on 2318 Mill Plain Road? Mr. Clerk, do you mind, do you want to go first or, yeah, okay. Come on up. You can please, identify yourself, your address, keep your comments germane to this issue.
Yeah, my name is Jill Ward. We own the property at 437 Orchard Hill Lane. Lot number 4 goes right up to our property line. And so my question is, a 20-foot tree buffer was mentioned. Does that mean that 20 feet leading up to our property line will have remaining the existing trees? Is that the tree buffer? Is that what that means?
That's my understanding, but the applicant, when he comes back, he hears your question and I expect he'll respond to it, but that's my understanding at least.
My second question, where will the electricity lines be coming in for this subdivision? Where will UI, and will they be above ground or below?
He'll underground. And he comes back up, he'll answer the question, but it sounds like he already did, but,
Lines will be underground, is that what I heard?
They're required to be underground
I
now.
just wanted to make sure I heard it right.
Thanks.
thank you very much.
Mark, is lot 4, did you?
Any other member of the public?
Yeah,
Mark, just wait until we have all the questions.
You mind?
of course, sir. Guess we didn't consult before.
Of course.
I live at 437 Orchard Hill Lane as well. Or Jill. So, obviously our main interest is in these trees behind our property. And it was interesting to hear that get talked about in terms of, I forget the term you use, conservation area or something, but that, obviously we can't see much behind us. And that was one of the, it's one of the benefits of why we bought the house. So the challenge we have is we have our property fenced, we have a fence around the yard, but our property extends beyond the fence. So it extends into this fairly wild area now of trees and overgrown stuff. And usually when there's sort of, our next door neighbour one time did some extensions and they put little markers in the ground. So we knew how far, where our property extended to and where theirs did. Like, is there any plan here to sort of stake out the area behind the properties on Orchard Hill so we can have a sense of, okay, they're going to take the trees away up to here? Because at the moment, it's not, like our property extends beyond our current fence. And once somebody goes in and whacks down a load of trees, they're gone for good, right? So how do we get some sort of, understanding of what they will take out and what they won't? And then there was another conversation, another statement made about dead vegetation. I'll just take out all the dead vegetation. What does that mean? Is that like a tree they think is dead? They can pull that if they want. There's a lot of fairly unclear as to what happens at the back of the properties on Orchard Hill. And we're just above number 4, but number 5 we'll be able to see as well. So what gets taken out behind us and to the side of us is interesting. I'd just like to know when that's going to get staked out and when we can see it.
I have a question, sir. I couldn't catch everything. I have a little hard of hearing.
Oh, sorry.
Pretty cool accent. Anyway, what is the width of your land that goes beyond the fence? Do you know approximately?
Probably 30 or 40 feet.
30 or 40 feet beyond the fence? And are there survey stakes anywhere?
It shows up on one of them. It shows up on one of them maps he showed earlier. I can show you that our little chain fence is on there, and then the extent of our property is on there as well. Off to the left of lot 4, as you look at it.
Where does the slope begin behind your yard? Are you on the uphill side of where they were talking about the slopes and everything?
Yeah, we were on there for quite a while when it was being shown earlier on. But
You put that up. The one with the heavy grid lines, like where's your lot in relation to that?
we're here. Right, so that's our little fence, right, at the moment. But that, I believe that is the extent of our property goes down to about here. I think it's that line, actually. Right, there was a
It
little,
might be on there. Is your name on there?
yeah, it's right here.
So that's where you,
That's us, right?
that's lot 5, isn't it?
It's lot 4, and then further down is 5. The markers here are where I think they're not going to take anything out beyond it. But obviously, it gets interesting down here. This is our fence.
So that 20-foot strip between the property line and it's marked like in a dashed line?
This, I think.
I think that's on the other side. That bold
Yeah, that's on the other side.
is the property line, right?
Yeah, so this, we own everything up here, and I think we own this down here as well. And it just, it's all mad trees in here, and you just don't want somebody coming in and whacking all the trees down. When they're gone, they're gone. Is this going to get staked out so we can see what's going to get pulled away?
The answer is yes. I'll put it on the record.
So somebody will communicate that to us? We can go and have a look at some point?
Certainly.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk?
Mr. Chair, we also have something.
Oh, I should say to anybody who's joining us remotely or let's say remotely, sign in the chat feature. I'm going to go to the people on in person. We'll go to people remotely or by phone. Thank you, Ms. Harrigan.
Have them down.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Brian LeClaire. I'm a partner with the law firm of Bertram Moses with offices in Milford and Westport, Connecticut. It's my pleasure this evening to represent the Town of Fairfield Housing Authority and the Fairfield Housing Corporation. Just by way of background introduction, the Housing Corporation, Fairfield Housing Corporation, is a 501c3 corporation whose mission is to acquire, develop, manage, rehabilitate, create, and preserve affordable housing opportunities for the benefit of low and moderate income individuals, families, and the elderly, and to provide services to help moderate income residents maintain and increase their independence. Fairfield Housing Corporation has one member, the Fairfield Housing Authority. And the Fairfield Housing Authority is a body, it's a public body, both corporate and politic. So what that means is it's created pursuant to the Connecticut General Statute, Section 8-40. And the Housing Authority, the Fairfield Housing Authority, was created by 1964 by the Board of Selectmen here in Fairfield. At which time the Board of Selectmen declared that there was a shortage of housing for low and moderate income families in our town. That was 59 years ago. As you know, the mission of the Housing Authority is to provide affordable, decent, safe, and sanitary housing to participants of its programs here in Fairfield. Right now, our authority administers 124 rental assistance vouchers for use in Fairfield under the Housing Choice Voucher Program under the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development. And it operates three different housing centers, Pine Tree, Trefoil Court, and Greenfield Commons, which have a total of 90 affordable rental apartments. The Housing Authority hasn't been able to open up its wait list since June of 19 for its properties. And in July of 2020, the Housing Authority opened up its Housing Choice Voucher Program, accepted applications for only 2 weeks for the Housing Voucher Program. Over 7,600 people asked for those vouchers in that 2-week period. To say there's a shortage of affordable housing in Fairfield is an understatement. We truly have an affordable housing crisis here in the town of Fairfield. I'm here with Carol Martin, who's the Executive Director of the Fairfield Housing Authority, to speak about this application at 2318 Mill Plain Road. And you're wondering why I'm here. It's because this is a subdivision open space proposal. And you're aware of the Plan of Conservation and Development, the POCD, the master plan that was adopted back in 2016. And our master plan talks about affordable housing. And there's a couple of key portions of the plan that you're aware of. It requires housing opportunities to people of all ages, incomes, and physical disabilities, with diversification of housing accommodations and housing for low and moderate income families, as well as senior citizens. You're currently in the process of updating this plan right now. And if you look at the July 28, 2023 draft, your draft provides as one of its stated goals, diverse and affordable housing options for people of all ages, incomes, and physical disabilities. And the plan on pages 30 to 33 on your draft plan notes that the existing housing stock in Fairfield is 85% single-family homes. This application you have tonight, unfortunately, seeks to create more of that same 85% stock we have, and it stays silent on the addition of any affordable housing to residents identified. So I think as to this 2318 Mill Plain Road, you need to know more than what was presented by the applicant. But dear Catherine Ross, the beneficiary of the estate of Catherine L. Ross, the longtime owner of this property. And you know your subdivision regulations require inclusive zoning. And that's in the package I submitted, that one section 2.7 of your regs at the first page. And that section requires that each plan of subdivision or re-subdivision that involves the development of 10 or more dwelling units shall include provisions to set aside not less than 10% of the units as below market rate units affordable to households earning not more than 80% of the median income. And that's a direct quote. It doesn't say a net increase of 10 or more, and it says development of 10 or more units. The section then goes on And that's in your subdivision regs. The section then goes on to provide that in determining the total number of units in a subdivision, you as a commission may consider not only the tract or tracts of land to be immediately subdivided, but also may consider any adjacent tracts or tracts of land controlled by the subdivider. Now, the applicant, I think, is being very coy in the submission you had. It talks about 9 new home building lots plus the existing single-family home on the property. And it mentions a 10-lot subdivision. But it also claims they're developing only 9 of those dwelling units. They're actually developing 10 dwelling units, not 9. The existing old farmhouse is going to require extensive renovation and development plus 9 more. And that's clearly the intent of section 2.7 of the regulations. It talks about not the creation, but the development of those units. But even more significant, look what else is disclosed in the preliminary open space submittal. And that's what you talked about last month, that preliminary submittal that came in. You learned that Ms. Ross is partnering with Sand Dollar Development, LLC. Now, you've heard that name, Sand Dollar Development, before. It's the owner of 1439 Stilson Road. That is the second dwelling up Stilson Road from the old farmhouse on the corner of Mill Plain Road. And it's the one that's currently under construction when you drive by. It was also the owner of 1485 Stilson Road. That's the one immediately up the hill, heading up Stilson Road from Mill Plain, immediately next to the old farmhouse. And it owned that until March of this year as well. So guess who Sand Dollar got both of those 2 parcels from, those 2 lots from? From the estate of Catherine Ross, April of last year, after she passed on. And in February of this year, Sand Dollar sold 1485 to the Lippert's family for $1.38 million. That's the one that's finished and developed already, closest to the farmhouse. Clearly not affordable. Those copies of the deeds are in the package you have as well. There's also 3 prior maps that I put in there that are on the land records. 1 lot line revision and 2 re-subdivision maps, 2017 and 2022. And you can see on the maps the property lines were adjusted to spin off several lots, leaving just 10 subdivided right now. And the lot known as 1485 went from being a 3/4 acre lot on map 7806 to a 0.4 acre lot on 8035, map 8035, to add yet another lot. And that's where the house is being constructed. This, I would argue, we believe, appears to have been done to stay below the section 2.7 mandate in your regulations that would otherwise require that 10% of the units be set aside as affordable. Now take a closer look. Let's take a closer look at that Ross farmstead. The administrator of the estate, Catherine Ross's estate, was appointed last February of 2022. By April, she already subdivided, sold 2 of the lots to Sand Dollar. In May of this year, 2023, the administrator distributed half of the property to Amy Ross and half to Sophia Catherine Ross of New York City, the deceased granddaughter. And copies of that document is also enclosed in that package. This is clearly a game to avoid your carefully thought out less than 10% affordable requirement in the subdivision regulations. And it's an effort simply to make more money by a developer by not creating any affordable housing as required in our regulations. You call it inclusionary zoning in the subdivision regulations because the intent was to include residents who need less costly housing options and may require housing assistance, like young professionals raising a family, disabled and elderly, to let them remain in Fairfield, our beloved town. By this series of transactions, this family has turned what was a 12-lot subdivision into one with 10 lots. We would like you, in approving this, should you approve this, to require this developer to provide a minimum of 10% of the 12 lots as affordable, which is 2 lots. However, based upon the needs identified in both the current master plan and your draft POCD, we strongly encourage you to consider more affordable housing. It's a minimum of 10%. We ask you to require 3 of these lots to be affordable housing. If you allow this to proceed without any affordable units, you're opening the door to chicanery and undermining, if not elimination, of the entire goal of this section of the subdivision regulations. And here's why. Here's a great example. A landowner could take a 20-acre parcel and subdivide their 20 acres into 5 lots. So then they can take each of the 5 lots, 4 acres each, into 8 building lots of a half acre. 8 lots, they're less than your 10. But because they had multiple lots, they ended up with 40 lots, yet they stayed below your 10 by just doing some quick little subdivisions with no affordable units. Throw in a quick deeds to a developer, get your fingerprints off the chain of title, make some other corporations involved, and you've pulled one over on the TP&Z Commission by not providing any affordable housing when you otherwise should have. Now here, we urge you to follow the requirements of your regulations. It allows you to consider not only what's before you, but what has been before you. And this is the same family, this is the same developer coming in to develop more lots of the Ross estate and the Ross family. And we'd ask that you, on behalf of the Housing Authority, require 3 affordable lots, but at a minimum, you are required to require 2 affordable lots.
So let's take this one at a time.
Sure.
Let's look at the current application. Your position is there's 10 lots, talking dwelling units, but there's 10 lots. 9 of them are going to be new construction. You're saying the existing house is going to be developed in such a way that requires inclusion in this.
Well, yes, it's the development of 10 or more dwelling units, the development of 10 or more. You're not.
What are you saying is going to happen to the 10th, the existing house that means it's going to be developed?
That's going to require extensive renovations given its old condition. Our client's been inside that property. Yes.
Okay. Would you?
And she
I
can
guess
talk about
I'll ask the question to the applicant's attorney as well, but do you know what's going to be done to it? Existing house. Assume it's going to keep the same footprint.
It would appear to keep the same footprint according to the plans that were submitted.
Do you know what's going to be done to it?
But Carol Martin, who's with me, she could talk. She's been in the house. She's looked inside the house and she.
Well, it's not a matter of, I'm just asking what renovations, and I'll ask you when the applicant comes up, I'll ask.
It will need structural repairs. It will need new heating and cooling equipment in the building, if not new windows and roofing and things like that. It's the development of, it clearly needs to be developed.
But your position is that updates, renovations, whatever work that's going to be done, that you think needs to be done, we're not sure if it's actually going to be done, but what you think is going to be done is a development that hits 22.7.
Yes. And it's not, and the words are important, as you know, we all know, especially as attorneys, we know words are important. The zoning regs, when it talks about the open space, talks about a net increase. It doesn't use of 10 or more dwelling units. It doesn't use the word development. 2 different words were chosen when this commission and your predecessor.
Increase doesn't help you, I don't think.
No. I'm saying it doesn't, because net increase only applies to the open space, not the affordability provision. There's 2 different, section 25.7.9 of the zoning regs proposed at the same time, and those have net increase of 10 or more.
I think
they could use that word if they wanted to in 2.7, but they didn't. They said development, which is a different word than net increase.
Okay.
But I don't think you have to get there, but you go beyond that, because we have to look at the second portion of 2.7.
Well, we're going to get to that in this.
Okay, you're heading there.
It's fine. I understand your position, and that's going to be up to us, and
correct.
I'll let Attorney Fitzpatrick do it as well. What's interesting me about the second point is early in the application presentation, it was discussed that this was based on an entire, 50-acre Ross estate that has been slowly subdivided out to various, properties and such. How far back do we go?
I think realistically, a number of those neighborhoods have been there for years. We have Ross Hill Road, we have Orchard Hill, going up Stilson Road, the street to the right. I forget the name of that. Is that Hirsch, maybe?
Yeah, but my point is this.
Right.
You went back to 2022, whatever it was with these most recent, but you stopped there. My question is, based on your arguments, why do I stop there? Why don't I go to the entire Ross estate.
I think you have to look at your provision came in, I believe, back in 2015.
Up until 2015.
And arguably, you can go back.
I mean, I guess it doesn't,
Subsequent to 2015, when your reg came in to prevent this exactly from happening. Small subdivisions, if that did happen, I don't know that there were any.
I don't know either.
That's why I gave the example with the, your 20 acres, how you can easily do subdivisions and re-subdivisions and totally walk around the reg, arguably, but that's not.
But here we have a beneficiary, it was the granddaughter, right? One previously was from her grandmother, who gave it to Sandollar, right?
The estate, after the grandmother died.
The estate
The estate in 2022 that deeded the properties to Sandollar and then.
One on the curve. Still.
No, the first two going up, the one that's built, that sold for 1.3 million, and the one next to it under construction.
Okay.
And it was and if you look at the maps, you can see how that was re-subdivided off of this bigger parcel. I think creatively to, now look, the estate has made the distribution, and now the beneficiary who had an interest in the property is the beneficiary of the estate back when this was done by the estate.
Yeah, but it was held by the estate though.
Doesn't matter, you're still the beneficiary of the estate. That's just playing a game with the title. It's like me.
Assuming though she has some control over it though. I mean, if you have the executor of the estate that controls that at that point, it makes all these determinations. Right?
Sure.
Do you have the probate records and to show that she had some involvement in this? I mean,
She has the involvement as the beneficiary of the estate,
She's
vesting
yes, I
title.
understand.
The title vests upon the date of death, as we know, subject to the administration of the estate.
So
So
it goes through the I get that when you're in court that you'll be able to say that, but when you're making the point that she had made, that the beneficiary had the control over it to give it to Sandollar, I'm gonna say, well, wait a minute, the executor had it at the time, made the decisions on behalf of the state. How do I attribute that, the beneficiary to the executor? I assume they're not the same person.
beneficiaries, no, the executor was an attorney.
Yeah, which is fine. I mean, sometimes it can be both. I just wanna make sure
It's a
that.
different person, but it could be controlled or owned or controlled. If you have an ownership effectively with title vesting upon the date of death, subject to administration in Connecticut, that was essentially a common ownership. And that's not the intent of your regulation, your zone subdivision regs to allow things like this to happen. Otherwise, people would do it all the time just to avoid.
Well, I mean, listen, I get the point. If you have you have a person, Mr. X, who has 50 acres and is slowly rolling it out every 6 months, even to the same developer and stuff. But I have potentially, an extra person involved with the estate and the executor who made these decisions, probably subject to a probate court. Right, I mean, right? I mean, I don't assume so as well, so. I assume there are other questions. Commissioner Levy, and then I'll go to Commissioner Fromm.
In terms of the two prior lots, you said this was 12, now it's 10. I don't recall specifically, were there subdivision?
That's the maps you have. You have re-subdivision maps in there.
But it did go through the subdivision approval.
I would assume so. I know there are maps filed.
They weren't just quit claimed out in some fashion.
You have data, one of them is a data accumulation plan, then you have re-subdivision maps as well that were filed.
Now, you're speaking in terms of development. So, for instance, if it's 9 new lots and it's a house, if there was a provision that house could not be developed and no building permits issued unless it was used for affordable housing, would that satisfy the, Steve, follow me there? I mean, if in fact we said we have
a condition of the approval that the
approval that you can develop 9 lots, and if you want to develop the 10th, in other words, that would have to be the 10% that would be affordable, or building that would be issued.
Well, not even the development, even he's saying renovation.
Yeah, renovation. You can't do anything there unless for that lot.
That would be the minimum that you should do, because I think it's a minimum of 10%. And our position is you had 12 lots, so that's 2 to begin with.
I'm looking at 10 right now.
I understand what you're saying. I follow your logic, and we have there's a huge housing crisis in Fairfield. That's really why we're so passionate about this, and the authority and the corporation and Carol and her team and board. He's so passionate about this in Fairfield. They see these numbers and your heart goes out to people. You open a list for an apartment and you know these folks are never going to get the apartment because we don't have them, or the house, or the downstairs.
No, there's no, I understand that, but you're also coming here alleging a scheme of sorts, though.
Well, I'm just telling you what the facts show is we have them and what's your regulations.
I mean, the passion is fair, and I understand your point now, at least about the tracts of land that we'll have to consider. I'll let Commissioner Braun go.
So I just want to clarify. The 1485, is that the next one up? Subdivision, or is that the?
1485 is 1439 is next to it.
And 1439 is 2 lots?
No. 14, the numbers go up. The numbers go, as you come down Stilson Road from Black Rock Turnpike, the numbers go up. And the odd numbers are on the south side of the street. So 1439 is the one.
Before the curve, downhill from the curve?
Coming downhill from the curve, 1439 is the one on the left that's under construction right now. You'll see the dumpster and the construction.
Is that the one where they had to blast the hillside to flatten it and all that, or is that a different one?
No. That's 1439. The next one is 1485.
That's on the same side of Stilson,
Same side.
on the inside of the curve around the corner.
So if standing on Stilson, looking at 1485, on the right of it is the farmhouse, 2318 Mill Plain Road. It has a Mill Plain address because it's around the corner, the front door.
Okay.
On the left of it is 1439, the one under construction. And 1485 is the one that sold this year to that family.
So 1485 is higher up the hill or lower down the hill? Closer to Mill Plain?
Closer to Mill Plain. The order goes from Mill Plain, from the corner of Mill Plain and Stilson, walking up Stilson towards the hill, towards Black Rock. The one on the corner is 2318. Next one is 1485 on your right. The next one is 1439. Then you have a few other houses as you start to round the corner that are up.
So he's the gentleman who came and talked to us because he was concerned when we were doing.
That was 1485, right? One that had
Closer to this Ross property.
Yeah, that's
What is being built, and the man above it was concerned.
Okay.
Yes.
That's a number lower than 1439.
So the administrator's deed and the warranty deed was from both of them are 1485.
Yeah.
In 22, the administrator's deed gave the property, conveyed to Sanddollar for $625,000, and then that was conveyed earlier this year for 1.38 million.
Part of it was part of it. You have to look at the maps and you can see the meets and the maps, description changes on the maps. 1485 became smaller through a re-subdivision.
Oh.
If you look at the assessor's cards, you'll see that deed was for parcels.
How did it become smaller?
By re-subdivision, because it was 3/4 of an acre.
Carve off 1439?
They carved out room for the other lot, yeah.
Okay. So those are the two you're talking, there's only 2 extra ones altogether you're talking about.
That's correct.
Built probably since 2015 when the regular.
They were built in the last year.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Oh, clearly since 2015, yes.
Okay, and have there been any others from the Ross estate?
I didn't go back looking at any other property from the estate when the other ones on Stilson were developed. I don't remember when they.
So, and then the other regulation that we were talking about, I did not realize that was an open space regulation, that the 2.7.5 or something, or this is 2.7, which is
That's your subdivision regulation. Your subdivision regulation is correct.
to the other regulation that had something else after, 2.7.5.
That's a zoning regulation.
And that has to do with open
That's
space. I didn't realize
25.7.9 is in your zoning regs. And that talks about the net increase of 10 or more, and that is
that's really for open space, not inclusionary housing. Inclusionary.
No, no. That's your fee. Your 25.7.9 there's the affordability component, net increase of 10 or more dwelling units. That's different. That's not what we're talking about. I'm talking
Does
about.
that have to do with inclusionary affordable
That's
housing?
money. That's for money. That's the
Well, that just has to
affordable
be-
money. That's a certain amount of money if you pull it up on your regs, I believe. Let me get my notes here. Hold on a second. How about that? 2.7 is the one we're talking about. It's the.
But does this conflict with the other one that Attorney Fitzpatrick was talking about? I'm sure he'll be rebutting in a few minutes, but, that one, does that relate to open space or affordable housing?
That goes to affordable housing. That is 25.7.9. You have that in the packet provided by the applicant on a September 5th letter. You should have that. You have both 2.7, that talks about the market, and then the regulations, net increase of 10 or more dwelling units shall include not less, and that is in your zoning regs, which is different than your subdivision regulations.
So you're saying the subdivision regs are more specific to subdivisions, and for some reason, the two sections are worded slightly differently, whereas development.
Correct.
Looking at 2.7 alone, it would come down to the definition of what means a development, but it gives us the discretionary authority to include other tracts of land.
Correct. Yeah, 2.7 lets you look at other tracts of land, 25.
Controlled or an agreement to buy, subdivide. You're saying we could look back, even though we don't have to look at the way it is now, we can look.
I would argue that's the intent of it. Otherwise, you could slowly subdivide your property, a big parcel, spinning it off until you have less than.
Exactly what you're saying.
That's the only way to read it. Otherwise, it has no.
But it does say in determining numbers of units for any subdivision, which would be now or whenever the application was submitted a month or two ago. Consider not only tracts, the issue here, other adjacent tracts owned, controlled, or under agreement to buy by the subdivider. At the earliest track, the latest track is, what is this? March 3rd, 2023 was when.
That's when a sale occurred of that 1485.
Sand dollar to the owners, Mr. and Mrs. Lippert.
Correct.
And then
2022 is
22 from against the estates.
Sandollar.
Well, that's the same property then.
It's that and the lot next door.
Where's the one, next door one is what?
1485 is next door. So what it got in 2022, it picked up both lots, the one it's building right now, plus 1485. And you can see from the maps, if you look at the leaves and bounds, you can pick that
And
out.
as of today, what's this one? 1485 is not owned by
Correct.
Sand Dollar or anybody in the.
Right, Sandollar developed it apparently and sold it to the.
And there, what was the other lot again?
1439.
Where's that?
Which is
I'll see that one.
being developed by Sandollar right now.
Okay, and it's owned by who?
Sandollar.
Sand Dollar. Okay.
That's when you see the construction now when you go by.
Because the language you cite also doesn't, the intent, I'm not sure what you mean by the intent. The language says in determining units may consider tracts that are owned, controlled, under agreement to buy by the subdivider presently. So at least you're only talking about really one potentially.
No,
1485 is owned by somebody else.
I would argue that the intent is to apply to both of those because they were under the Catherine Ross ownership, all of that property. And
Well, I mean, that kind of goes back to my question then. I know.
back you go, I get it, yeah.
How far back do you go? Because, the regulation came in 2015, but there's no necessarily a time thing, and you yourself are going back in time.
I'm only going back 2 years, I'm not going back to
But
20.
the language says pretty clearly to me, at least the plain language says, at the time of the application, in determining the total number of units of any subdivision, that would be the time of the application. So only one of those properties is currently owned by Sand Dollar.
So you're up to 11, so you're still 2.
Well, I mean, but you're saying,
It's the same.
but your argument is the intent goes back even farther, which then brings my point back in. How far back do you go? You say 2015. Really, if the idea is to avoid a scheme that you're saying, then you want to go back farther.
I don't think you can go back beyond 2015 because it wasn't the reg back then. I don't think that would be a retroactive application of a zoning regulation.
Yeah, but I mean, you have 1485 that's not even owned by them, and then you're saying that we should include that in this
But
analysis.
it was when they started this process.
That's not, I think, against the plain language of this. I mean, we'll listen to Mr. Attorney Fitzpatrick, but, and it does say owned, controlled, or under agreement, so it's disjunctive. So your point is that it's the ownership part. Commissioner Pikowski.
I just have a question. I'm reading the letter from Miss Sophia Ross around keeping the original farmhouse. And so I just need clarification around how that, what is being done with that specific property, or I don't know if this would be a question for attorney.
Patrick.
Okay, wonderful, thank you.
But I guess the question you have is though, what work can they not even repave the driveway? To be.
My question is, right, it's obviously, I would assume it's going to be, let's go back up.
Questions? Commissioner Braun, excuse me.
It does seem to me that the intent of the inclusionary zoning reg is to make sure that this isn't done, or people chop it up into the road. And I haven't decided how I interpret it yet, but if this is a loophole, we probably should address it in the POCT and our regulations, because that does defy the whole intent of our inclusionary zoning for our town. But I have to think about this a little longer to see, I know the word development, that one lot, saying it's part of the development. They might not be developing it in terms of building a new driveway, but we're saying it's part of the development.
Who currently owns this property?
It was distributed to, Ms. Ross, I got the two names here.
Ross owns it currently, right?
It was, one half to Amy Ross and one half to Sophia Catherine Ross, which is whose name you saw, Sophia Catherine Ross, on your application last week.
Well, Sanddollar doesn't own this whole area that's at issue.
No, she's indicated she's partnered or joined them for this purposes of this development. They're your applicant. But in your
So
paperwork.
you don't hit own then. You don't hit the ownership disjunctive on. Well, now we're going to control now, but that brings in the estate that I was talking about with the executor. Who had control at the time? Who was making the decisions? And it
was owned by, the beneficial ownership was Miss Ross, who's the beneficiary of the estate, so it was.
Beneficial ownership is a lot different than legal in a lot of ways. That you're opening up a can of worms there.
But legally, we have last year.
Ownership's out though. We'll agree that ownership prong is out.
Well, no, because Miss Ross is the owner. If you want to forget about
this application,
the owner.
$10 owns 1485. All right, well, not 1485. What's the other one?
1439.
They own 1439. Different owners.
If you want to know for pure ownership, ownership at this moment in time, you're correct.
Okay, that's fine.
Miss Ross owns 10
An
lots.
agreement to buy doesn't really apply either, right?
Control?
Yes, we're on control.
It's your interpretation of what.
Okay, I just want to be clear on this because I just, simple things.
So if you want to just go by the literal whose title right now is the title for Mill Plain Road property, 2318 Mill Plain Road, which is the farmhouse, and what is now proposed as a 10-lot subdivision is Amy Ross and Sophia Catherine Ross. So there you have your 10 lots being developed at a minimum, right there. So not even getting into the neighboring properties, which I think you have to the adjoining property.
Well, it's two separate things. You got the 10-unit thing, whether that farmhouse existing is a development that goes under this.
Correct.
And I don't really have a full understanding from you of what renovations bring it from, make it to a redevelopment, a development, not a redevelop or a renovation, but replacing windows, a development, I guess, in your mind?
The renovations this building will need, yes. This is going to need.
Not what it needs.
Yes.
Window
Development,
replacement.
yes. It's development. It's the development.
I just want to be making clear.
It's not the creation that you as you being the commission used when this was enacted in 2015. It talks about creation in the zoning regs. This talks about the development. That's a different word.
When I hear development though, my first thought for subdivisions is new construction. So, I mean, I get where you're coming from now, and I know Commissioner Harrison, you're next, I know.
Hi.
So I'm just telling you, that's where I go with it. But then you've got that point, then your next one is, what about the other two ones around Stilson? One of them's owned by one of them's owned by Sandollar.
Correct.
So ownership is out for both of them, I think, right? Sand Dollar has one.
Look, purely looking at the title at
Yeah,
this moment in
that.
time, yes, but not if you look at the intent of this is to look back when they started spinning and subdividing and re-subdividing these things. That was the Ross.
It was owned by her grandmother, the estate. Well, I guess the state doesn't necessarily own it, but it was in
That's
the
my point, is the
estate.
state doesn't own it. That was my whole point with the title.
But it's controlled at that time by the executor of the estate.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, it's administered by the executor. It's not.
She didn't sell that property to Sand Dollar.
The administrator of the estate, yes, she did. She told the lots to Sand Dollar, 1439 and 1485.
The current owner, what's her, I apologize, though, what's her current? Sophia is the one you think so is?
No, the estate, the administrator of the estate executed the deed, which you have in your packet, right?
Yeah, I just want to be clear about it. It
Yes.
wasn't Sophia that sold it to Sand Dollar.
Sophia was not the grantor, the estate was the grantor,
Yeah.
correct?
Okay. Commissioner Harrison, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just had a question. I just, minor question. Yeah, I was just rereading Ms. Ross's letter and she said that she had entertained, other offers from other people, other developers. Now, was your client one of those interested buyers in the property?
So,
Let Carol address that.
I'm here representing Fairfield Housing Authority. My name is Carol Martin, and first of all, thank you very much. This board has been very supportive of my last zoning application. So I do know you folks are very sensitive to the affordable housing crisis and very sensitive to the work we do. I am here tonight representing Fairfield Housing Corp, Fairfield Housing Authority. I don't think there's too many people in the room that know that I also represent and have the position of Executive Director of the Westport Housing Authority. The Westport Housing Authority has a 501c3.
I just wanted to know if you were interested in this property at one point. That's all.
Yes, yeah, but I just wanted full disclosure, please, for everyone's, I guess, benefit or detriment at this hour. I also run the Westport Housing Authority. They have a 501c3. The Fairfield Housing Corp was very interested in purchasing it, but didn't have the capital resources to do it. Sasko Creek Development Corp did, and Sasko Creek Development Corp did make several offers on the property.
Yeah, what's Sasko Creek or Sasko Hill? What is this?
It's a 501c.
That's owned by the Fairfield Housing Authority?
Nope.
It's a separate entity?
It's owned by the Westport Housing.
Well, okay, got it. Okay.
Just, housing authorities own, Fairfield has Fairfield Housing Corporation, Westport Housing Authority has Sasko Creek Development. These are corporations to control and own their properties.
And Westport can buy property in Fairfield?
Yes. And that's and they have separate 501c3 corporations. Both of them have single members, the housing authority. And this is done for some complex financing and tax credits, among other things that are available to people when they develop property and the investors in the property. But you can't do it through the authority. And this is common all over the country. You need to have corporations that are owned by the authority to do that. So Carol did have an interest in acquiring it, if that's your question.
No, the
Extreme interest.
that Fairfield.
I know land is
Westport Housing.
finite. We get it, and I
She didn't want to say.
No, I wholly appreciate the forthrightness. Thank you.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
So I didn't get what the point was of what, it wasn't the Fairfield Housing Authority, it was Westport Housing Authority.
Commissioner Harrison asked me if I'm interested.
Okay.
Yeah, and I am interested. That's why I'm here tonight. And, both Fairfield Housing Corp and Sasko Creek Development Corp, the Westport Housing Authority and the Fairfield Housing Authority, we're all very interested in trying to redevelop the property and, build affordable rental housing.
And ultimately, the Rosses, they said no, they wanted to go with Sand Dollar.
That's right. Yep, which is freedom of choice and a good faith purchaser and a good faith seller.
Any final questions or Attorney Claire, any final?
No, I just have a letter to you, similar to the one you have, with kind of a summary of our position, which you can have in your file as well. Yeah, that's all.
Printing them out, you all the work.
Read it.
You can read it, it's your pleasure, not.
I'll ask Attorney Fitzpatrick, I'm not really sure.
Maybe Attorney LeClaire. Are Amy and Sophia joint tenants to the property, or do they each own separate parcels?
I think that's in the packet I gave you, I believe. I didn't want that to use. It's an administrator's, second.
No, that was one of the granddaughters or beneficiaries. Commissioner Braun.
Would it be possible to, provide these electronically, at some point before, they have to make a decision, so.
Sure. You mean what I just provided? Absolutely.
Everything you provided, would it be great? Would it be possible? The package.
Attorney Leclerc.
Yeah, I will.
Attorney Leclerc, please just submit your things to the winter to the count staff so we have them electronically. I assume, Attorney Fitzpatrick, you have copies of these. I'll be in tonight probably of what Attorney Leclerc gave to us.
I gave him, I provided them to him, yeah. See if I can answer this.
That's another question.
Go ahead. You can really go to Attorney Fitzpatrick if that's
Okay,
it.
if you don't mind, sorry, because this is for another question. And when you were evaluating potentially, buying this property, so what kind of evaluation did you do? You said you were in the home. Did you bring, folks with you to evaluate the need of that house and what was required? Yes. Okay. So you have more detailed information than what was, it's not like you just perused through, you actually had someone doing a.
Yeah, no,
evaluation.
It was a substantial price that we were willing to offer. And as a result of that, we had, the opportunity to do some due diligence. And we did that.
Yes. Sure you have to do that for your creditors.
Exactly.
All right, thank you.
And the transfer of the property was via certificate of devise to center distribution, dated May 4, 2023, to Amy Ross and Sophia Catherine Ross. 1/2 interest and undivided 1/2 interest to each one of them.
Which, of this property?
Yes,
So it's all owned by
2318 Mill Plain Road.
It's all owned by the two of them.
Correct. Correct. And that's recorded at volume 6416, page 322 of the land records.
I have a question.
I have one more question.
Based on what Ms. Martin just said, I don't recall if we got that detail yet about what the result of your due diligence inspection was of the 318.
We didn't get a chance to complete it. We ran out of time and.
Or did you inspect the house?
Oh, yeah, I was inside the house.
For what needed to be done?
Oh, it's a home that was built over time, so there's, it doesn't meet any of the standards or codes. In fact, we had the State Historic Preservation Officer out to inspect it, because of the, value of the history. And, they had opined to it started out as possibly a 2-room home that got built up over time. So, back in the day, you weren't building to any standards. So, it was, and, unfortunately, the post and beam structure is completely deteriorated. So, a structural engineer would have to go in there to see, if you chose to preserve it in its current condition, you would have to determine what, if any, of those beams, post and beam, structural elements would actually satisfy, current building code. And then you'd have to decide how you could replace them without having to completely demolish the house, which, folks in restoration, especially historic restoration, have that ability to do that. But it would have been extensive.
Yeah. Is anyone living in the house now?
Yeah.
You know how long it's been vacant?
Well, I know that the oil tank, it was disclosed to us that the underground oil tank, which was the only source of heat to the home, was removed probably about 4 or 5 months ago. So, they don't even have, heat in the, yeah, they don't even have heat. And obviously an underground storage tank, would have to be removed because of its environmental risk.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, just one question, maybe some homework for you, but maybe you want to put together a timeline, because you talk about properties being sold and bought, and maybe that's helpful first, so we have that clarity.
Sure. We can do that for you.
It can be just a summary of what you presented. No new evidence, please.
Glad to do
The one that he just mentioned, can he submit that after we close the hearing, if we close it tonight? You just mentioned a conveyance that I don't think it was in this packet.
No, I can include
Sisters?
That's fine.
That's the
These are all public records, right? So
certificate of device. I was gonna include that with the scans I gave you, which is everything you have. You know, portions of the subdivision regs, and that has all the deeds in them as well. That I was talking about with timelines, if you look at that. I'll be able to walk through those.
that'd be great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
That's what I was asking, just a summary of what he's presented, so no new evidence. If there is new evidence, Attorney Fitzpatrick will say as much, but I think Attorney Leclerc knows outside what he's presented. We'll make sure of that as well. Attorney Fitzpatrick will have a chance to review it. Attorney Fitzpatrick, I saw a public comment.
Yeah, thank you.
I do.
No, I know, but I think there's some other public comments I need to get to.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I know, I jumped it as well, thinking that Attorney Leclerc was.
So excited about it.
No, I get it.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you. No, sir. Name and address, please, and
Rob Vogel, 1319 Stilson, relatively new to the neighborhood, so very excited to be here, and all this very new to me. Just here as a concerned citizen immediately in the vicinity. Only thing kind of that really struck me is you guys are all smart individuals. You can see the difference between a scheme of subdividing 5, 5, 5, creating 80 when you are trying to circumvent something. It seems that this is a process that there was 1 or 2 sales to Sand Dollar, and then clearly some kind of marketing process to other bidders. It just strikes me as separate transactions or separate sellers. If you go with the logic of a beneficiary and an executor, you could have 100 beneficiaries in a state. It's much different being a direct individual than it is being just a beneficiary of somebody's estate. That's my 2 cents.
thank you, sir. Any other member of the public in person that wishes to be heard on this matter? Seeing nobody in person, I'll turn to anybody who's joining us remotely or by phone. Ms. Harrigan, who do we have?
So we have Alyssa Israel, who has indicated that she would like to speak. And then also Aileen Lippert to follow.
Say. Ms. Israel, are you there? If you're joining by phone, please press *6 to unmute yourself. Ms. Israel, are you there? Come back to her if she doesn't. How do I? There we go.
6.
Well, maybe if she's not by phone. If you're by phone, it's *6. If you're by computer, you have to unmute yourself on your end. Mute button that probably should be on the bottom left, unless you're in a full screen.
Yeah, it says computer.
You have a mute button there?
Your screen.
Able to unmute her? You only mute people, I think, right? Oh, wait a minute. I heard you.
Call it. Folks. Why don't we go to?
Yeah, let's go to Ms. Lippert, and we'll go right back to.
Jürgen Lippert.
Yeah, hey folks, sorry. It's Jürgen Lippert with Aileen Lippert. We are the homeowners at 1485 Stilson Road. We are probably, along with the neighbors who spoke on Orchard, most impacted directly by the results of this work, being is that we're immediately adjacent to not just one, but multiple lots of land in development. After hearing everything here today, we just wanted to come out and publicly say that we're in fully support of this project and plan, despite the fact that there will be disruption to our lives due to construction and noise, which we've had to endure with 1439, I think the number is, over the last few months. We still think it's the right thing for our neighborhood and development to bring more neighbors in and bring people into our school systems and support our public. So that's it.
Thank you. Ms. Israel, have you called in? Looking up the agenda.
Yeah.
That's fine. Any other member of the public that's joining online or by phone wish to speak on this matter? If you're joining by phone, please press *6 to unmute yourself.
Hi, this is Alyssa. Can you hear me?
Yes, can you put your computer on mute, please?
Yes, I'm going to have to, I just leave the meeting. Hold on, how do I get out?
Just getting some feedback, even if you go into the other room or something like that.
Okay, sorry, I left the meeting on my computer. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
We can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yes. Not great, but hold on. So sorry, I don't know why I can't unmute. Okay,
Go ahead.
perfect. I can't hear you too well, but I'll do my best. So I wanted to concur with Ms. Martin and Attorney LeClaire in their interpretation of 2.7. Especially the last sentence, I was going to read the whole thing, but I read it carefully, and the word development didn't stand out, but to me, and, trying to mince words and figure out what that means. But this last line, in determining the total number of units of any subdivision, the commission may consider not only the tract or tracts of land to be immediately subdivided, but also any other adjacent tract. So I think, to me, what that's saying is that the commission has the discretion to ask the developer to have at least one affordable unit as part of this tract. That's what that means to me, and that's the intent of it. And we need affordable housing, as was stated earlier. So I hope the commission will uphold the intent of 2.7. So that's my first point. My second point is 2.3.8 of the subdivision regulations. That last line that was kind of cryptic, that wasn't pointed out by staff or the developer's attorney until late. It's this line which is very important. The fair market value shall be determined by an appraiser jointly selected by the commission and the subdivider. Now, this is a regulation. I don't know why the department has developed a different custom and is using the tax assessor, but the tax assessor has way undervalued this property. There's no way an almost 4-acre property is worth only $925,000. So, and first of all, the regulation does not allow the tax assessor to do what he's doing, nor does it allow the department to have this custom. So I would urge the commission to please use our regulation and together do what the regulation says and determine jointly an appraiser and come up with an independent appraisal, not using the tax assessor, for this property. And I would say it's probably worth well over $2 million, maybe 3 or 4. I don't know. I'm not an appraiser. And I think I think that now that I know that this has been happening, this custom, that the Open Space Fund has been probably been underfunded for years and years and years. It probably could have been 2 or 3 times more than what it's been because of this custom. So I will wrap up and say to please use the regulation and do what it says, and get an appraisal. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have another person who would like to speak. I don't know what their name is, though. It's HMCTERNAN.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, this is Hillary McTurnan. I live at 1405 Stilson Road, right next to the, I'm forgetting the number, but the new construction that's happening. And I just wanted to say that I'm in agreement with Eileen and Jurgen in that both Bernie and I feel that this proposed plan is the best thing for our neighborhood. I'm an environmentalist and I care about conservation, and the open space idea would be lovely, but if you come out and look at the land, it's really not conducive for that. There's a steep hill, so I think that the compromise of leaving the trees on the steepest areas to preserve some of that natural beauty is great, but otherwise there's so many families looking, so many ways that we can increase the numbers of homes in our town and to build community in the elementary schools. And yeah, that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Is any other member of the public wish to be heard on this matter? Joining us remotely, please unmute yourself or press *6 on your phone to identify yourself. Any other member of the public in person or joining us remotely or by phone wish to be heard on this matter? Seeing anybody, Ms. Harrigan? Not hearing anybody, not seeing anybody in person, I'll close the public comment portion of this application. Patrick, rebuttal?
Please. The neighbors on 437 Orchard Hill, we will be happy to stake both the property line and the line of the buffer zone so that you'll know exactly what it is.
Great, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Nobody disagrees with the need for affordable housing in the town of Fairfield. We need to have a law or regulation to require an applicant to do so. There is no such law or regulation in our zoning code or subdivision regulations. It's nonsense of chicanery, of being coy. I practiced here for 40 years. I can't come back and have any credibility with you if I engage in chicanery. Just doesn't happen, doesn't work for me. I take incredible offense. If we wanted to be coy, what would we have done? We would have torn down the house, built a new house. You can absolutely do it. 3.7 acres, one house, then subdivided the thing, and then there'd be absolutely no argument that there were a development of more than 10 houses, because there's only nine lots left. That's what would have cured any of this nonsense. We didn't do that because we weren't engaged in that kind of ploy or chicanery. Mr. Mason bought Amy's house. Amy, your house is dead, by the way. Bought her house, rehabbed it, and when he bought it, he had no idea, because I was his lawyer when he bought it. I had no idea that it could be subdivided. Mark Ockman said, I think if you do this, this, and this, we can get a square in there. And then we came to you and subdivided it. And by virtue of taking down all that foliage so that you could actually improve the sightline, it was doable. There's no ploy. If you look at, I think there are only two key points left. One is 2.7 development. Development is defined by the Oxford Dictionary as the process of converting land to a new purpose by constructing buildings or making use of its resources. Reason I quoted to you from the zoning regulations, as well as from the memorandum that Steve Grothwell submitted, is because it was the same guy, the same applicant, submitting both regulations simultaneously, approved by this commission simultaneously. When he says in his memorandum, the proposed changes, not 1, 2, would require that any development project would result in a net increase of 10 or more residential dwelling units set aside not less than 10% of these units at below market rate housing. He was referring to both of the amendments that he proposed. That's what he was trying to do. And that's what 2.7 does. When you say 2.7, and you use the term development to imply to replacing windows, please. It's beyond a stretch. There's nothing in that language. It's the development of 10 or more dwelling units. To fix your windows in your house is not the development of a dwelling unit. It's simply not. Plain language does not support that position. The development is 9. And as I said, if we wanted to be cute, we could have done so. We didn't. And then I quoted to you from 25.7.9, your zoning regulations, which requires the 10%. This is subdivision regulations for subdivisions. This is condos, other apartment houses. Talks about a net increase of 10 or more dwelling units. And again, the memorandum refers to 10 or more dwelling units. I don't think in my mind, the word development implies creation of a house. There are only 9 units, dwelling units being developed or proposed here. The inclusionary zoning, talking about adjoining pieces, I'm not going to do clearly the chairman has already made the point that Sophia Catherine Ross is different than the estate. She's a beneficiary. But if you look at the language, I think one word was missed. In determining the total number of units in any subdivision, the commission may consider not only the tract or tracts of land to be immediately subdivided, but also any other adjacent tract or tracts. Oh, there's nothing adjacent. There is no other piece adjacent. It's owned by either Sandollar or Sophia Catherine Ross.
There's a break in between.
There is. That house was purchased by Tom Mason, renovated the existing house and Amy's house, and sold. And then the other lot is to the north of that, if you will. It does not abut. So, as soon as you hear a lawyer talking about the intent, it means the language doesn't say so. Let's call a spade a spade. So there is I don't know what the intent was. It looks to me like the intent is if you have a piece next door, yes, we can count that in determining whether we can require a 10%. But when you talk about any other adjacent tract can be considered, there is no other adjacent tract. So I
2 parcels though, just to hammer the point home. You have the current property, you have, can we pull up the map, please? I'm sorry.
Oh, sure.
Thank you. Was the 2 properties, one was
1539 and 1485.
Okay. You have the adjacent property to
Or maybe I'm wrong. Am I wrong?
Do I go to the front?
No, you had the right idea. I went up Stilson. That's actually better, probably. So do we hit, is that Jason one, was it 14?
You got it right there.
That one is not an issue, but I see.
The one on the corner, Mr. Chairman, is the one that is the second piece that was cut off, and it is not adjacent to the property which is being proposed to be subdivided.
I see 2 properties adjacent on the corner. One is the one that cursor is in now. The one on the corner is not. The one right above it looks like just barely.
Correct. The one right above has been already sold.
Okay, but that is one of them. Which one is that?
That is 1485.
And then the other one that we were talking about was the one right on the corner.
Correct.
Okay, so it's really 1485 is the one that's adjacent.
Correct.
Okay.
And that is not owned by the applicant, by Sophia
No,
nor by Stan Dollar.
controlled is the other aspect that he went into, Attorney Leclerc went into as well. And how much involvement did, Sophia have in the estate? Idea?
But there's still no, I don't know where controlled comes in. There's no other property. What other property would it be relevant to? You can't look back. Oh, that's the other issue. I'm sorry. The language says owned, controlled, or under agreement to buy. I don't understand how that can be 3 years ago. Owned, controlled, or under agreement to buy. That was the intent argument. The language just does not support any argument that you can go back any period of time. It does not. That's the way the reg is written. It cannot be construed to be something it doesn't say. One last thing, Mr. Chairman. You've seen the letter from Sophia Ross. She wants to retain Grandma's house, proposing a residential subdivision that conforms to all the prior approvals by the P&Z for the development of the Ross family property. We believe that the single-family development of this property is preferable, appropriate, conforms with the existing neighborhood. The Town Plan of Conservation and Development references Mill Plain as primarily single-family residential development. The reasons we've outlined, we request the application be approved. I'd be happy to answer any questions the Commission may have.
Questions? I have one. Just if you know, how many other offers did you receive from other developers?
I didn't handle the sale in any fashion. I just know there were several.
Several others. Well, we
I
know
think,
one.
let me just refer 1 second, Mr. Chairman.
So, I mean,
I think that this is Sophia Ross's letter. The land and the house have been listed for sale almost a year, and there have been many builders that have presented offers. I chose Mr. Mason and his building company over higher offers, because I knew he would make the best use of the land, would enhance the homes around. I went to school with some of his kids. He was my ski coach.
oh yeah, and I was, yeah.
So there were apparently several other offers.
Leaving.
As far as I'm concerned, your credibility, your reputation are beyond proof.
Thank you.
And I think all of us who have, seen you before us for many years would all agree.
I appreciate that.
I am a little concerned about the point that was raised, development, and how that, and we do need to explore it. And I mean, to my mind, development means to increase in value, to develop, add to. It's not simply, a development like a whole tract, but, what would stop, the owner here from, after we approve this subdivision, from then knocking down the farmhouse, assuming it's not historically preserved, and then just building another house?
Well, number one, if that was what she wanted to do and she had wise counsel, she would have already done so.
That's true. Okay. But we're now looking prospectively.
Two, I think she wants her grandmother's house. That's what she has stated. That's what I believe to be the case. And I think she's entitled to it. I mean, and it is not going to be, well, I don't know how to cut that baby in half. Is it you can't get a CO for, through 5 years? I don't know what it is, Commissioner. That thought occurred to me until I realized that if, she was going down that path, she would have already done so.
I mean, is there provision that she will continue to own solely and have fee title to that where the house is? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I recognize the issue. I couldn't come up with a nice, clear-cut answer to it. I attributed a surety of motive, for lack of a better term, to her. And I realized, yeah, if she wanted to take it down, she would have already taken it down and built a house. Then we'd look for the remaining 9, and there's no argument with the word development. I don't think development is improvement. I think development in the subdivision regs is a new home. That's my interpretation of that language.
Even if you were to knock you had said, and I looked it up just curiously, what development means. You had said in Oxford, the definition, do you have it quickly, just to say it again quickly? So what I have, and this is just Google, the process of converting land to a new purpose by constructing buildings, making use of its resources. Converting land to a new purpose being kind of the key. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you this is just Googling development. If you knock down the house, is that still developing it? If you knock down and build that new house, are you developing the land? Not sure if you are. I mean, based on that definition, converting it to a new use is residential.
There's another definition, if I may.
Go ahead. I mean,
development is a process that creates growth, progress, positive change, or the addition of physical, economic, environmental, social, and demographic components.
Okay.
I mean, that's
Yeah, it could be.
Develop is to improve. We're in a quagmire here. I mean, one could say, well, if her intention is to maintain the house, that's fine. But if she wants to develop it, then it's for purposes of affordable housing. I don't know.
I mean, is the house habitable?
It doesn't sound.
It certainly needs work. It's,
You can't move in there today. I mean, no one can live there. No heat.
I don't know the answer to that.
Sound like there's heat.
And the joists are.
Bill, there's heat. There is heat.
There is heat. Okay, thank you.
They remove the exterior oil tank.
Why don't you come up here and say, so that we don't have that word on, that voice floating in the.
Yeah, sorry. I believe the exterior oil tank. Tom Mason, the owner of Auto Development. I believe the exterior oil tank was removed as part of the process of a potential sale. Pat, is the tank inside now?
Outside, there's gas service now.
Pardon me?
Gas service.
Gas service, it services the house. I was looking in the house 2 days ago. It's clean, it's neat, it's habitable. There's a functioning kitchen. It needs a paint job, it needs windows, it needs a roof. 5 years down the road, 5 months down the road, it's not really critical. Sophie and I have discussed what resources I can bring to bear on the old house as we're building new houses in terms of helping her out with siding, painting, replacing windows. I spoke to her mother the other day and she said Sophia intends to own this house indefinitely. That's all we know. Whether or not she wants to commit to something, I don't know. I'd have to.
Thank you.
From your perspective, you want to preserve it rather than develop it.
It's the farmhouse. Yeah. That's her memory, and that's why she didn't want larger development that was all but going to guarantee the destruction of the farmhouse. All the other applicants, when we originally sat with Sophia it's probably a year ago because it came on the market. Houlihan listed the property. We took a look at it. We did some rough ideas on the cul-de-sac and everything. We said it's worth X, and we think somewhere between 8 to 10 lots is what belongs in this property. Her current advice from her, I'm not sure if he was actually her legal counsel, but he was helping her with the maze of subdivision and selling the property. Felt like there was a lot more value there through higher density. So she went down that road with higher density applicants, realized that this was going to be much more of a scorched earth approach. And that deal apparently fell apart 3 or 4 months ago. And that's when she came back to us and said, changed my mind. I'd like to revisit what you talked about. The house first went on the market. And that's how we re-entered the scene. Dusted off our ideas and off we went.
Final questions? Final comments?
I have nothing further, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. All ended, I will close the hearing on this application. Well, I know. Idea was to go back to the POCD, but that's. The idea, as I said, was to have a little discussion to start it. I didn't want to put this on a pedestal and then waiting and pushing off an actual discussion, but that just seems a bit difficult to really dive into anything. Time and between the time left, so show of hands, does anybody want to start?
There've been a lot of, comments, a lot of them overlap, I've noticed. We agree on a lot of things and we probably disagree on some things, but if there's a way of sort of coordinating or organizing them, into like categories, that might be helpful for the discussion next time.
That was what I think the staff had wanted to do if we got comments last week, to be in the position to coordinate and organize them high level, which I think now we are able to do because enough people have submitted very helpful comments. I saw yours, Kathy.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. So we're in a position to do that now. We have the consultant lined up, and I've asked staff to open that whole next meeting for the consultant and the POCD discussion, which will be public, but amongst the commission. So we can start talking about this. We can start getting on the same page, flushing out ideas, vetting ideas, getting comments, potential edits, all that stuff. I highly doubt it'll take one time next time, but we'll have the full time with the consultant, open to the public, obviously, but no public comment yet. But we will have a good sense of what our comments are to organize them, as you said, Commissioner Braun, as I think staff had planned to do. We'll have the consultant lined up with questions to kind of figure out where to, how to best to proceed with him available. We'll be able to ask questions. And then we will be, I guess, keeping this line item in until we as a commission feel comfortable to go to public comment. Now, I don't know how long that's gonna be. That could take one meeting. That's hyperbolic, probably. It could take, hopefully not 20, but, another hyperbolic, but somewhere in between for us to, as a commission, get on, maybe not the same page on everything, but at least to go through and do our own discussions, vet the ideas, and have topics of conversation. And then when we're ready, we make that decision as a commission, and I'm not gonna do it unilaterally, nor will staff. We'll open it up to public comments. And the public comment will last however long it lasts. And that's and then after that, we'll, I guess, go into executive session, or at least have the ability to go into executive session. Whether we do or not, whether we decide after public comment, want to do executive session or do something else, will be up to us as well. And that's kind of how I foresee things going forward. And as far as however it progresses naturally. Mr. White, anything before I go to Ms. Harrigan? That's kind of where I am. Commissioner Harrigan.
Harrison.
Sorry.
It happens once or twice.
I'm sorry. I was doing well. A good time when nobody was really paying
I just have a
attention.
question, just in terms of, it's great feedback from everybody, but I'm just wondering, is there like a central location where we could put it, like maybe a SharePoint document by category? Because, you emailed, I emailed, maybe just like in a central document that we all have access to, like a SharePoint? I think that would just be able to help us organize.
I don't know exactly what that is, to be.
That we all come in.
Yeah.
We've given you I've printed hard copy of everybody's comments that I had received up until about 4:00 today, so you have them. If there have been others, I know when I spoke to Kathy earlier today, said she still needed some time, which is fair. I know Janine still has some comments, and Mr. Levy still has some comments. And that's all fair, the best I could do right now is to give you the hard copy so everybody's got the same.
Doc or something.
All of this has also been shared. We have some time now to digest, try to organize and coalesce these things around major themes so we can make the best use of our consultants' time and how to potentially have dialogue about that. Just to set the expectation, we're not proposing that there's going to be a presentation made at the next meeting. It's as the chair just said, let's hone in on the topics that warrant further discussion. And if there are those comments that arise from the collective input thus far, we'll be able to discuss that with our consultant team on how to best try to approach that development. But absolutely, you guys are in the driver's seat on how we proceed.
I'm very disappointed that we're not getting a presentation from the consultant. All of our districting is always presenting plans and documents. And I think that's really denying us a real view of what their thinking was. So I would just say I'm disappointed that that's not being allowed. And I wish it was different. But I don't know why that would not be the case. Again, as I said the last meeting, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, we're the client. We should have that right. Not a middleman, no offense.
Yeah, well, no, I would say that.
Name on it.
I agree. And at the end of the day, this is your plan. This is not staff's plan. This is not the consultant's plan. This is your plan. So we just need to have the dialogue to get us, where we need to be.
Yeah, but I also don't want the consultant just give a presentation that's not necessarily the topics that we want to discuss. When we get these, now that we have comments, and we can distill them into themes, this will be not just given to us, disseminated to us, it's going to be disseminated to the consultants. That's probably going to be essentially the agenda items. So I don't really want the consultant to give a presentation based on what he thinks we want to present. I want us to get the comments, consolidate, get the themes, set the agenda ourselves. That's what I think we're going to do. Don't really, that's my priority is what we have to say. That's kind of what I want. And, I think we can do that.
I'm not quite finished with my comments. Can we still submit stuff?
Of course. I have no doubt that, I've submitted comments and I know that I'm going to have additional. Nobody's going to obviously be locked into anything as of next week, whatever it is. They're going to say, just like how it happens at every meeting. They say something, it triggers a thought. That's just how it happens.
Tonight's hearing might have triggered a few thoughts, actually. Tonight's hearing triggered.
No, and very well, yeah, and that's good. So the more the merrier. I'm not sure, Google Doc, I don't really want us to be everybody to go up and have to be able to change a doc. I think having a central thing, submitting to staff and having them coalesce things. We're going to be sharing the raw data from all of us, so we're going to see all of it. I hesitate having the ability to change or update things on our own.
I was just suggesting a Google Doc with our suggested changes, not us physically, going into.
No, I think that's what they're going to do, is that coalesce everything and then distribute something, whether it's a Word document, PDF, Google Doc. We're going to have the raw data from everybody, plus
my world.
That.
Yeah, it's going to be if I may, it's going to be an iterative process here, but we need to start with, the high level items and then drill down until we get to where you're comfortable. That's really what it's going to, how we see this rolling.
We can ask the consultant questions, correct?
Absolutely.
He's going to be here, thankfully, in person because he's coming by the town.
And we'll just, it's going to evolve how it evolves. It's the ball is completely in your court at this point.
I would plan on, we got him, our meeting's going to be obviously till 10. We end early. That would be very interesting and surprising to me. We have 3.5 hours with him, and it's not the only time. It's that we have 3.5 hours with him next time. So, good amount of time to get rid of it, get ready for it. Tom, and I think Lenny other people may have this issue if something comes up. If you have specific questions that don't necessarily go to the themes, and if you have 10 themes that we're gonna probably talk about more, obviously. But if there's specific questions that you have, Tom or anybody else that are not able to attend the meeting, obviously send them to us. We can get those addressed. The sooner we can get things disseminated, get to staff, obviously they can be updated, but anything further to staff means they have more time to get us and the consultant. So.
And I don't mean that, by the way, in any disrespect. That's just kind of the way I work, but there's what it is.
All right. Good.
Thank you.
I'll go over the hearing.
You're not collaborative.